news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, August 29th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 20 degrees. It's 22 in Smiths Falls, but already feeling like 29. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Fuel leaks have forced NASA to scrub the launch of its new moon rocket on a no-crew test flight. The next launch attempt won't take place until Friday. That's at the earliest. The Space Launch System rocket was set to lift off this morning sometime between 8:30 and 10:30 with 3 test dummies aboard the first flight, a mission to propel a capsule into orbit around the moon. The shakedown flight, when it happens, will be a big step forward in America's quest to put astronauts back on the moon for the first time since the end of the Apollo program, and that was 50 years ago. NASA hopes to send 4 astronauts around the moon in 2024, landing humans there as early as 2025. Well, quite a wrap-up to a week of celebrations and events. After 2 years scrapped during the pandemic, Capital Pride returned to the streets of downtown with the parade in a big way. Here's City News reporter Chris Curries.
A colorful cast of thousands of supporters, a perfect summer day, and 185 floats, a record for Capital Pride, which paraded through the streets of downtown yesterday. The federal government also unveiled what it described as a historic first yesterday, as it announced the 5-year, $100 million plan to support 2 LGBTQI+ communities across the country. Trudeau touted the plan as the first such federal initiative of its kind and said it demonstrates the government's commitment to fighting discrimination and supporting diversity. He said 75% of the funding will go towards community organizations focused on diversity and inclusion because, quote, that's where the real work of support comes from. Chris Curries, City News.
City News time, 9:02, and now your forecast. Here's meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Mainly cloudy conditions for most areas, some sunny breaks, and heads up for scattered thunderstorms, and especially as we head into the evening. The high today, 31 degrees, will feel like 39, 22 for the overnight low. More thunderstorms through the evening. For today, the high, 31.
And right now it is feeling warmer as the humidity begins to build. 20 degrees in Ottawa, 22 in Smiths Falls. About 550 customers are without power, and that's going to happen for the next hour and a half or so. Areas affected around Old Innis, Sheffield, Lancaster, Blackwell, and Bantry. Crews are hoping to have an equipment problem fixed by 10:30 this morning and all power restored. A 29-year-old woman airlifted to hospital after a crash in Alfred Plantagenet. Her injuries described as life-threatening. The collision at the intersection of County Roads 19 and 2 injured 7 people altogether. That intersection had to be closed during the evening hours for the investigation. 6 people, all in their 20s, killed in a crash on a road that had been closed for construction. This happened in the Barrie area around the weekend. We get the latest from City News reporter Carl Hansky.
Looks like a fun night out for this group ended in unspeakable tragedy. What we know timeline-wise is that the group of 6, 4 young men, 2 young women, all in their 20s, went to a casino Friday night, I'm told. They were reported missing on Saturday after not being seen or heard from for hours. And then around 2 a.m. on Sunday morning, all were found deceased inside their vehicle, which had crashed on McKay Road, which is a rural road here southwest of Barrie. But what were they doing on this road is part of the police investigation. The stretch of McKay Road has been closed off for months for construction, and they would have had to driven around signs saying road closed. Carl Hansky, City News.
And I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Separating headlines
from hearsay.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
August 29th. Where did this month go? And just like that, 1 week till Labor Day, and that's it. Summer's gone. Over. Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show. This is City News. I hope you had a great weekend. Boy, not too many weekends like that left. Thanks for deciding to spend part of the day with us. It's going to be a busy one. Busy day already in the news business, and that's just the way we like it around here. Coming up anger. Anger in Canada, and Canadians taking out their anger on politicians, on journalists. It's a major news story over the weekend, but it's been in the news for some time now. What seems like an increase in vile attacks on politicians, on journalists. Just, what's going on? Why is this happening? Are these incidents on the rise? And if that's the case, why is that the case? The latest incident making news involves Chrystia Freeland. Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland, Minister of Finance Chrystia Freeland. She was, it's my own opinion, targeted. I think that's an accurate way to put it. She was targeted by a man and a woman in Grand Prairie, Alberta. You may have seen this video on social media or on the news over the weekend. All of this happened at the City Hall in Grand Prairie, Alberta. They went looking for her, this pair. Okay. They admit that on the video, that they just happened to have good timing and they couldn't believe their luck. That they had planned to go to the City Hall in Grand Prairie, Alberta and confront Chrystia Freeland. And lo and behold, who was waiting for the elevator but Chrystia Freeland? And this guy, my gosh, he launches into a verbal attack, the likes of which you have probably never heard, using some of the most vile words in the English language. Get out of Alberta, you're a traitor, and that's the stuff I can say on the radio. It's all of that and a whole lot more, and I mean, he does not hold back. And when finally someone, I guess in the employ of the City of Grand Prairie, finally shows up near the elevator, he escorts the pair out of the building. But it all happens in a public building, in a government building, a municipal government building. Chrystia Freeland is the second most powerful politician in Canada. The Deputy Prime Minister, the Minister of Finance. And in this video, it does not look like she has any security detail at all. A sitting duck in an elevator. If this pair had more on their minds than just a verbal assault, heaven forbid, I don't know what we would be reporting this morning, because I don't know what would have prevented it. Because all Chrystia Freeland could do, and those with her, was wait for the elevator door to close. And that must have seemed like an eternity. Another angle of the story is Pierre Poilievre. He was eventually asked about this because some of his critics accuse his campaign for the Conservative Party leadership of somehow playing a role, of setting the tone for this kind of behavior. He said it was totally unacceptable. He said it was totally unacceptable. He said that. And then he revealed that he has had to hire a personal security firm to protect his family. So we're going to talk about this at some length this morning. We're going to jump into it in just a few minutes from now with Professor Stephanie Carvin from Carleton University. From there, we'll pick up on a topic that a number of you raised on Friday, the supervised injection sites. In Ottawa, we have 4 of them. They're all very busy. The experts tell me we could use more than 4. I don't know how that would go over with the general public. But some of you expressed on Friday that you think this approach called harm reduction is going too far. One person called me on Friday during the Friday free-for-all, longtime resident of Sandy Hill, said his neighborhood is getting a lot worse and has gotten a lot worse over the last little while because of the number of people abusing drugs, open drug use, drug paraphernalia in the neighborhood. And some of you want to know what kind of resources we're putting into treatment, abstinence programs, residential treatment programs, 12-step programs, whatever the case is. So I don't know the answer to that. So we're going to try and get some answers for you this morning and this week. Wendy Muckle will join us, CEO, Ottawa Intercity Health. We'll also spend some time talking about the municipal election this morning. Big Pride Parade on the weekend. Gosh, what a crowd. Great job by City News colleagues. Jason White, Sam LaPrade. David Smith, Chris Curries, Rogers Television. They broadcast all of the Pride events over the weekend. Catherine McKenney. David, you were there. Catherine McKenney marshalling the forces at the Pride Parade.
Big contingent,
right?
Lot of fun.
Yeah. Lot of support. Lot of support for the Somerset Ward councillor. It seems to me right now, before Labor Day, it's McKenney with all the momentum in the race for mayor. But does that mean anything right now? Because it's before Labor Day. Does it mean anything? There's only been one public opinion poll about this election campaign, I mean the race for mayor. It gave McKenney a big lead over the other two higher profile candidates, Mark Sutcliffe and Bob Shirelli. But again, doesn't matter. Are people tuned in? Are they paying attention? Do people in Ottawa even know there's a municipal election on this year? Or is it all about what happens after Labor Day, when the summer holidays are over, when children are back in class, when people are back to their regular work routines and they're paying closer attention to the news? Right now, I guess I would say this. If you're involved with either the Sutcliffe or Shirelli campaigns, you better hope so. Because right now, to me, it looks like it's all about McKenney and the mojo. McKenney's got the mojo right now. Geoffrey Johnston will join us this morning in the final hour of the program. Good friend of mine, writes about international affairs for the Kingston Whig Standard. He emailed me on the weekend to point out something that I was not aware of. This Wednesday will be 25 years since the death of Princess Diana. Noah is our technical producer here on the Rob Snow Show. How old are you? 27. David is how old?
25.
25. So really no memory of the living, breathing Princess Diana. My wife and I were talking about this on the weekend. Her daughter is 26, has no childhood memories really of the life of Princess Diana.
Died the year I was born.
Right?
Yeah.
Gosh, that makes you feel old. 25 years since the death of Princess Diana. I couldn't believe that when Geoffrey told me that. It's been 25 years. I remember exactly where I was when I heard that. That is one of those news stories. Just like, where were you? When? I was living in an apartment near Baseline Road in Pinecrest, not far from IKEA. I had just started as a student at Algonquin College. It was the first week. And when I went to bed, I knew there had been a car accident in Paris, that she had been involved in a car accident in Paris, but you remember, it was very, very early the next morning. So I was asleep, and my ex came into the bedroom and said, Princess Diana's dead. 25 years ago. Wednesday, the 31st. Geoffrey Johnston is going to remind us about one of the lasting legacies of Princess Diana, her advocacy for the removal of landmines. Went to Angola, went to Bosnia. Canadian government was deeply involved in that movement. Lloyd Axworthy, you remember, was a key player, what became known as the Ottawa process. Geoffrey will explain more after the 11 o'clock news. 25 years. My goodness. Okay, Talkback Hour today. We do the Talkback Hour every morning between 10 and 11 o'clock. A chance for you to weigh in on a really hot news story. The Freeland video is about the hottest one, I think, in the country right now. Here you have a very powerful woman, and she is just verbally abused, verbally assaulted, called, I mean, every name in the book. And there's not a security guard or a police officer or anyone in sight for the second most powerful political person in Canada. Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance. So it's kind of a three-part story to me. I mean, there's just the video. Like, what is going on with that guy? That he feels that he can just go in there and say whatever he wants to whoever he wants. Like, what is that? Then I want to know what you think. You have someone with the responsibilities of Chrystia Freeland. It's not about the politics. It's about the position, the responsibility of the job. Big job, big responsibility, big profile, big target. Seemingly not having a full-time, 24/7, around-the-clock, I mean day and night security detail. In this day and age? And the Poilievre angle of the story, is there even a Poilievre angle of the story? He is being accused of fanning the flames, of setting the tone that allows this kind of stuff to flourish. Is that fair? He says it's totally unacceptable, and that he has been the target, his wife has been the target of similar harassment and abuse and has had to hire a security firm to protect his family. Your opinions, please, after the 10 o'clock news at 750-1310 on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
Never seem to understand in time what's going on outside of my mind. All the pointless things we did, just a recipe for being broke as shit. I wish I could spend countless hours wasting away with all that pair of flowers. Oh, he really has time for that. The thing itself or the aftermath. You can't always go back to the battle days. It's your fingers and the size of a glaze. If you look back and don't see the battle days, you still must be living in them. Wonder where some of those people now, and the youthful kings, have they held the power? Or are they on that quick decline, still holding on to the long line? You can't always go back to the battle days. It's your fingers and the size of a glaze. If you look back and don't see the battle days, you still must be living it on. Turn your head and look behind. He's waiting patient for your decline. Turn your head and look behind. He's waiting patient. And tell myself I can always check out. Backslide wine and ashtray mouth. Dirty clothes and darkened eyes. And nose running out of time. You can't always go back to the bad old days. It's yellow fingers and the sides all glazed. If you look back and don't see the bad old days, you still must be living it on. You can't always go back to the bad old days. It's yellow fingers and the sides all glazed. If you look back and don't see the bad old days, you still must be living it on.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
So again, I want to set the scene here for this Chrystia Freeland video that was making news over the weekend, continues to make news this morning. The scene is the City Hall in Grand Prairie, Alberta. Chrystia Freeland and a couple of other people are waiting for an elevator. And the elevator doors open. They get into the elevator. They're approached by a rather large man, and you don't see the woman on the video, but you can hear her. He's accompanied by a woman. And he launches into a profanity-laced tirade. The censored version sounds like this.
Cheers. Elias, try it. Great, that's Christina.
Christia, yeah. What are you doing in Alberta? You get out of this province.
You don't belong here.
You're here. You
yeah, go ahead and hide.
all right, guys, you got a trade elevator. Christia Freeland, I'm going. No. I'll walk up with my own power. Don't touch me, okay? Don't touch me. Go.
We are leaving.
Touch me.
We are leaving.
So,
Do you love that? Do you love her? Do you love Christia Freeland?
No. Get.
Don't tell me to get. I'll walk up my own power, okay? So back off.
all right, so eventually he's escorted out into the building, and then the pair have a conversation where they say, oh my gosh, that felt so good to be able to do that. And can you believe our luck, how we just bumped, she was right there. We came down here hoping to bump into her, and there she was. She was right there by the elevator. It's really something to see, because there's a moment where Chrystia Freeland is just trapped in this elevator. Nowhere to go. She's in an elevator waiting for the door to close. And there doesn't appear to be any security detail there. Stephanie Carvin is a national security expert and an associate professor at Carleton University's Norman Paterson School of International Affairs. Good morning.
Good morning.
What's your reaction to what you see on that video?
I mean, look, I think, let's start out here. I think Canada does have a very fine and welcome tradition of people protesting politicians, people making their views known. This is very important in a democracy, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think that's what we're seeing in this video. I think what we are seeing is someone who is, you know, let's face it, very physically large,
Yep.
using aggressive, abusive language, not trying to make any political point other than I don't like you and you should leave in this video, right? And kind of using their physical presence to intimidate not just the deputy prime minister, but also clearly all the other people around him that are trying to get him to stop. So that's effectively what we're seeing, right? This to me isn't democratic protest. This is just pure bullying and harassment.
From a national security point of view, what are the implications of something like this?
Well, it's interesting, right? I mean, one of the things I've always loved about Canada is that our politicians have traditionally been very accessible, right? That The Prime Minister is obviously protected, but that, you can have events on Parliament Hill, that, you can go to your MP's office, that, that they've been free to kind of meet with their constituents. And that's increasingly no longer the case, right? So one of the things we've definitely seen, I would say predating the pandemic, but definitely having accelerated during the pandemic, is physical threats of violence to electoral leaders in ways that we have not seen in this country possibly since the 19th century. So I think that this is something that, national security is trying to wrestle with, because in the first instance, there's a lot of MPs who are potentially increasingly targets of kind of people who believe that physical intimidation is the best way to make their point. But also the kind of, I use a big word for Monday morning, but researchers will sometimes call this stochastic terrorism. So it happens, by which they mean it happens randomly, right? That, it's hard to predict when and where these kinds of events will happen. So it becomes very hard to protect politicians from events, and I guess that's what you would worry about from a purely...
Do you think, in light of what you see on the video there, Professor, she should be better protected? She's the second most powerful political figure in the country, and there doesn't seem to be anybody around her. She is trapped in that elevator with this man screaming at her.
I would hate if this becomes the new norm, right? I like that our politicians feel free, that they're, that they also feel like human beings, that they can live their lives. They don't have to be protected in compounds and fortresses and things like this. But I think what we're seeing now is within the center of government. They are, and in our national security agencies, they are rethinking this, right? We have seen politicians been given panic buttons that they can carry with them in case that they are attacked, in which case security forces or police will come to them as a result, right? So this is increasingly where we are. Whether or not someone should have protection should probably rest with that individual and their choice. But yeah, it does highlight the need to, in this day and age, that our politicians may actually unfortunately need greater protection.
Okay. I want to play you a clip. Pierre Poilievre was asked about this by a news reporter. He has been accused of fanning the flames, setting the tone, and may bear some responsibility for the proliferation of these sorts of incidents. Let's play the tape, please.
Well, it's absolutely unacceptable, and I can relate, of course, because I've been the subject of so much online harassment and abuse. My wife has received so much horrific material directly to her social media account that we've had to hire a private security firm to protect our family against all of that abuse. So unfortunately, this is all too common and all too long-standing. We have to put an end to it and demand that everybody treat other Canadians with respect when we debate political ideas.
What do you think of that as an answer?
Criticized for it. I mean, look, he's not going to win any political points in a Conservative leadership race for showing sympathy, I think, to Chrystia Freeland. But he too, he's correct. He too has received physical threats by the same individual, we should say. Also, apparently harassed him for allegedly his links to the World Economic Forum, which is often a conspiratorial target point for some of these kind of populist movements. Yeah, I mean, look, we need everyone to get on board with this, right? It would have been great if it was a much more stronger defense. One of the things I did notice, for example, was Rob Ford came out this weekend and gave a really strong statement about what happened to Chrystia Freeland. I think that's good if people who have different beliefs can sit down and say, this is unacceptable, because we're at a point now where, one of the things I worry about is, we're no longer having political debates. We're having shouting matches and physical intimidation. Like, we're not sitting there and saying, we should cut taxes by such and such amount, or we should invest in health.
It's not an episode of TVO these days, Professor. It's not TVO with the agenda with Steve Paikin sometimes these days, right? It's just...
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it's much more of a fisticuffs kind of environment. And I mean that in the literal sense. It's this idea that, we no longer want to debate our opponents. We want to jail our opponents. We want to put them in jail, right? Like we want to, the idea, of arresting people for treason because you don't like their political ideas or disagree with their agenda. No one's talking about voting people out anymore. They talk about putting them in prison.
Locking them up. Lock them up.
Lock him up, exactly, or lock her up in the case of Chrystia Freeland, right? So I think that this is something that is bad. So, there's a couple of things that I think need to happen. One of them is the idea that, we do need politicians to make as robust of a statement as possible. I was looking at, for example, Maxime Bernier and some of the other people on the far right in Canada, and they're saying, well, no one speaks up for us when we're attacked and we're harassed and things like that. And anytime politicians are assaulted or things like this, it's bad, and we should speak up against it. But we also have to look at who's fanning the flames of the fire and trying, and making the situation arguably worse. So getting more politicians to speak out against this is something that I think the vast majority of Canadians would probably prefer. The second thing is too, and something I've noticed is that law enforcement doesn't seem to take these folks very seriously. And, we saw throughout the pandemic, it wasn't just politicians, but healthcare workers, public health officials, like there were protests outside their actual homes. And, law enforcement doesn't really seem to care or take these people seriously or just view them as inconvenient nutters. But the fact is, when these individuals are not challenged for their behavior, they escalate because they think what they're doing is permissible. And so I'm not saying throw everyone in jail, but I do wonder why it's taking, as we see an increase in harassment against journalists, particularly female journalists of color, and politicians and things like this, why aren't we seeing any kind of response whatsoever? And has this lack of response to kind of basic intimidation and harassment, is it actually making the problem worse by, convincing people that what they're doing is right or okay, or that it's something that they can actually
get away with,
continue to do?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Professor. Nice to hear from you this morning. Yeah, bye-bye.
Pressing topic. Next time.
Yeah. Okay. Stephanie Carvin, national security expert, associate professor at Carleton Paterson, Carleton University's Norman Paterson School of International Affairs. Wendy Muckle from Ottawa Inner City Health right after the news on supervised injection sites. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
In Ottawa and the Valley. This is is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, August 29th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now, feeling in the low 30s in Ottawa, 23, in Smiths Falls, 24 degrees, and here's what's making news this hour. Back to school for most a week from tomorrow. Some start earlier, for example, tomorrow. As soon as the altered provincial science advisory table is concerned, the head of that table tells City News he's worried about COVID levels that he says are 5 to 10 times higher than they were at this time last year. The recommendation from him: continue to wear a mask. Power outage affecting 550 customers in the area of Old Innis, Sheffield, Lancaster, Blackwell and Bantry. Hydro Ottawa crews are working on an equipment problem there affecting the area. That work is expected to be finished within the next hour. An update this morning for anyone trying to get or renew their passport. Minister Karina Gould says 721 people have been hired to process passports currently in backlog. Gould says for the most part, passport applications received in person are processed on time now. Those mailed in, though, are still an issue. The last stretch of the public inquiry into the 2020 Nova Scotia mass shooting begins today. The phase of developing recommendations will begin with a review of more than 2,000 recommendations from 71 reports by other inquiries and reviews. City News Time, 9:36. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Let's talk about the city's drug addiction strategy with Wendy Muckle, the CEO of Inner City Health. Good morning.
Good morning.
Number of callers to the Rob Snow Show on Friday, Wendy Muckle, unsolicited. They brought this up out of the blue as a topic that they wanted to talk about, which I think maybe telling me, kind of tells me that it's kind of getting up there on the public radar. They expressed worry that we may be going too far with harm reduction in the city. That they're worried about the number of people abusing drugs seems to be as high as ever. The amount of people using drugs openly seems to be getting worse. The drug paraphernalia that's in some neighborhoods is a problem. What do you say to those people? What would you tell those people? I'm sure you hear this from time to time. So.
Yeah, well, a little bit of that. I mean, I don't think anybody in this city, I don't think anybody in Canada would say that we don't have a serious problem with illicit drug use. And that, you know, everybody sees the evidence of that. And so they do see public drug use. They do see more paraphernalia. So I don't think anybody disagrees that we have a serious problem, and many of the things that that are generating that problem are things that are very hard for us as a community, and certainly for individual citizens within the community to really wrap our heads around, or frankly to have very much influence about. And I do think that we need to have more of those conversations about what is actually fueling these problems, and what can we do about it that's different from what we're currently doing. And I don't think that that's really a conversation that we're yet having. There is a lot of polarization. There's a lot of, finger pointing, like this is your fault, this is, your fault. But that's actually not very helpful. And a lot of the ways that, I guess I'll say, the general public, people who aren't sort of, drowning in this world the way that my staff and I are, one of the things that we know is that a lot of what people think about illicit drug use and about people who use drugs is really fueled by a narrative that isn't actually based in fact, and really comes out of those roots of the whole war on
what's
drugs.
Not based in fact? What's not based in fact?
Well, I'll just give you an example. So, there's this idea that if you have a supervised consumption site, that it somehow attracts people to using drugs. And, if you just think about that logically, people don't start using drugs so that they can go to a supervised injection site. They use drugs for other reasons. And people come to supervised injection sites for all kinds of reasons. But usually they come in a large part to get help. They either want immediate help to not die, or they come there to get hooked up to other kinds of help and services that are going to help them have a better life. I mean, that's something that everybody, I think, would logically think is a good thing. There need to be many pathways into getting help for people who need help. The other thing is that there's this idea that everybody who uses drugs has a problem with drugs, which is not the case. And, recreational drug use has existed in our society since the beginning of time. The problem now is that the whole drug supply is toxic. So, yes, we have kids, teenagers who are experimenting with drugs in the way that every generation, before them has done, but they're actually dying from it because the drug supply is toxic. And so when you have a government whose solution to that is to fund more treatment beds, there's a real gap between what would actually keep kids safe and, help them safely go through this phase of risk-taking.
The common question from all of the people who raised this as an issue on Friday was, what are we doing in Ottawa to get people off of drugs? If I was a drug addict, if I was addicted to drugs, and I came to Inner City Health and said to one of the workers, I can't do this anymore. I need some help. I'm at rock bottom. Can you please help me? Help me. I'm ready to do anything to stop this. What's available?
So everyone in our organization is keyed up to help people while they have those moments. So that moment when they actually want to change. And our staff are all trained to be able to use the techniques to actually help people move forward with that thinking and the changes that they want to make in their life. So that's the first thing, is that there's nothing that we would hear that's better than that. That's something that we absolutely want to hear and that we hear every day. Okay. And we have a whole variety. It really depends on what route people want to go to actually make those changes. Do they want to go to a formal treatment program? Do they want addictions medicine? Is their primary goal housing? So whatever it is that the person sees as, one of the things we would ask them is, that's great. How do you see that happening for you? How, what do you think the best pathway for you is? And then, we're well positioned to help people along that path. But there are lots of barriers. Right. So, there's not enough housing. Getting into addictions treatment programs, there's long waits for those kinds of things. Right. And we are doing workarounds. We do, for example, have some treatment programs that are available to people while they're using the supervised consumption site or while they're in the shelter. We have Indigenous healing that's accessible to people that are using drugs. We have addictions medicine that, specialists that go to the supervised consumption site. So there is, that pathway out is very well established, very well known, and frankly, well trodden. A lot of people take us up on that. Here's where I think we have the problem that people, I think don't understand, is that it's outside of our capacity to be able to prevent people from getting to the point where they need help around drugs. And what's, happening currently in this province around prevention doesn't seem to me to be very much. It's all fine to help people get out, but it would be great if we could prevent people from getting in. And I don't see, I feel like we're not as a community looking at what the things are that we need to do. And we're also, drug use is one thing, but it's often a symptom of something else. So people may need help with something entirely differently. They may need help around their mental health. They may need help.
Could be abuse.
Abuse, getting their trauma treated, all of those kinds of things. So, we need to, particularly for our children, we need to look at what are the things that are bringing children into contact with drugs and, in a problematic way, and what is it that we can do to help children so that doesn't seem like the best solution.
Yeah. Okay. See, this is one of the things I was wondering, and one of the frustrations is, if I'm at that point where I'm ready to seek help and get some treatment, it doesn't do me much good if the worker says, and your space will be available in 4 months. That would be very... But it sounds, obviously you're aware of that, and you have, as you say, workarounds, right? So,
right, and it's not as if we're going to say, and go away, we'll see you in 4 months. We're going to continue to support you through that process. We're going to continue to help you around your goals. I mean, some of the things that might help you are, we will help you manage your money so that your money gets spread out over the time that you have available, so that there isn't, these periods where there's a lot of money available to buy drugs, and they'll get you into trouble. So, whatever your plan is, whatever we can do to help you create that stability so that you're well positioned when your 4 months is up and you get to go to your treatment program, that's all important work. Problematic drug use isn't, cured in a day. It's not cured by a 28-day residential treatment program. For people who have a serious problem, it doesn't work that way. It's a series of small changes which help the brain take control and change its relationship to drugs. And so all of those things that put structure into people's lives, all of those things that allow people to make good choices. I mean, one of the good choices people make is deciding to use their drugs in a supervised consumption site. And all of the research shows that people who use a supervised consumption site are much more likely to enter treatment programs than people who don't. And that's not because of the magic of a supervised consumption site. It's because their brains are actually trying to fight against the control that the drugs have over them, and actually make different choices and make good, safe choices.
Okay, very interesting. Complicated matters in the big city. Wendy Muckle, thank you for your time. Bye-bye. Yep. CEO, Ottawa Intercity Health. Barry McLoughlin, an expert in leadership, will join me next here on City News.
Well, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, we've been in the city for over 50 years, supporting youth between the ages of 6 and 24 and providing these amazing relationships, these amazing mentoring relationships to them. And, what I've seen, I've been with the organization 10 years, and in my 10 years, I've seen some transformational life-changing relationships that, youth that have been meeting with their mentors from the age of 6, who go on to be meeting with them until they're 18 plus, who are now, some of them are graduating from university, some are going to their mentors' weddings, being part of the family and being there when they have additional siblings, etc. So it's just an amazing thing to watch, that it's life-changing and life-lasting.
Yeah, and you're always looking for new initiatives. I think most organizations are, and even pre-pandemic, always looking at something new and interesting, ways to raise funds, raise awareness. And you have a new one called Thrive. Tell us about it.
Right. So Thrive actually started as our Clothes for Kids' Sake program. In 2016, we were trying to find new ways to raise dollars to support our mentoring programs. And we started off with some clothing bins in 2016, and then partnered with the Ottawa Catholic School Board, in which they allowed us to put new bins across the city. And so we've been collecting clothes since 2016, and we're just over the £1 million mark of how many clothes we've actually collected.
Wow.
And yeah, amazing. An amazing partnership with the Catholic School Board. And that was phase 1. And we collect gently used clothing. We don't collect anything else.
Right.
In phase 2, we really wanted to collect, we wanted to move into potentially a retail location. And in 2020, obviously things didn't happen. COVID occurred. Mm-hmm. So we weren't able to open up a store, but we opened up a thrift store. And Thrive Thrift Select is where you can go and buy gently used clothing online. And we have items for young people, items for adults, items for infants, and we ship Canada Post, or you can come and pick it up at our location right now at Confederation High School in Ottawa, which is where our offices are. But really the goal is we're doing two things, right? We are providing support to our youth in Ottawa, because the dollars we raise come right back into our programs, to our mentoring programs. And the second piece is we're helping the environment. Keeping £1 million of clothes out of landfills has been really significant, and also being able to bring these dollars back in to be able to create our mentoring programs and provide these opportunities for our youth.
Of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Barry McLoughlin is our expert in political communication, crisis communications, corporate communications, and leadership. He's the president of Transformational Leadership Consultants and a fellow at the Masters of Political Management program at Carleton, adjunct professor in the MBA program at Cape Breton University, in the Shannon School of Business there. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Good to hear from you.
Great to be here. It's great to talk about a cornucopia of crises everywhere.
Yeah. The Chrystia Freeland video.
Yeah.
Why do you think events like that appear to be on the rise?
Well, I think that they've got echo chambers that seem to support this kind of outrageous bullying, conduct, and it's spread everywhere. There are no boundaries now, geographic, to stop this. Mirroring others that do these things, whether they're in public meetings in the United States that are, screaming all kinds of things at politicians or, individuals, women. It's terrible what's been going on, and it's only going to get worse, sadly, because of the nature of how it spreads on social media.
Okay. What do you think about the security situation? In this case, there didn't appear to be any.
Well, sadly, this is what's happened. We used to boast that, hey, we don't need it. Even Chrystia Freeland said that a couple months ago, apparently, in Toronto. She said, well, I don't have to have security. We don't have security up here. But really, I remember walking through the halls of Congress just before 9/11, and no security whatsoever. No, you could walk right into the Capitol building, walk right down the aisle. You'll see this senator, that congressman. And I remember the policeman there said, this is the people's house, he said. So, we all have to change. We've changed here in Ottawa on Parliament Hill, and I think we have to get real and not, sort of sleep our way through this, get real about providing protection for women politicians who seem to be particularly targeted by this kind of conduct. It is outrageous. And by the way, there's got to be consequences. I mean, we now know the name of this guy. We know even who his assistant was. Perhaps they're working on laying charges for them, but you can't ignore that. They have to be charged, and there have to be legal consequences. They'll have their day in court, but they've got to be charged on this.
Chrystia Freeland is the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance. High profile.
Yep.
And for someone of ill intent, here it's a verbal assault.
Yep.
Vicious, though, and angry. But even if it's not Chrystia Freeland, any Deputy Prime Minister or Minister of Finance is a high-profile target. For someone like that, there used to be a time when you could drive up to Parliament Hill and go look at the Christmas lights, for crying out loud. We don't let that happen anymore. Yeah. And I think we're just being naive to think that the people in these sorts of high-profile positions don't need security. I think it's living in la-la land. Am I wrong?
Totally right. No, you're totally right. I think the naivete is the word. There's a naivete around this. We have to get over this. Stop patting ourselves in the back. We don't need it. We're different. No, we're not. Sadly, it happens everywhere. It happens in Norway. It happens in Sweden. It happens everywhere.
Japan, Barry.
Japan, exactly. Right. So I think we have to get over that and get serious. And I think somebody, it shouldn't take something like this to say we need security here. There's got to be security. At least for the high-profile politicians. I think that this maybe is the shot across the bow here that we need to all take seriously.
Okay. So Poilievre is running he's running a leadership race. He doesn't want to say anything nice about the Liberals, obviously, but he was asked about it, and this is what he said.
Well, it's absolutely unacceptable, and I can relate, of course, because I've been the subject of so much online harassment and abuse. My wife has received so much horrific material directly to her social media account that we've had to hire a private security firm to protect our family against all of that abuse. So unfortunately, this is all too common and all too long-standing. We have to put an end to it and demand that everybody treat other Canadians with respect when we debate political ideas.
What do you think of that as an answer?
Well, he was, sort of a day late doing it. Secondly, in the very thing that he says, well, he kind of condemns it, but all in the same sentence, I too have been, pretty well negates it. You have to give a full, complete response to what she had to endure here, and not say I too, me, my family, I too. That pretty well, he's trying to level the playing field of all this. I think it was kind of tone deaf, frankly.
Really?
I think he should have done a better job of that, a little more thought behind it. Jean Charest came right out of the gate, right away, I think, of all political leaders, and condemned it fully and forthrightly. And I think that's what I don't know why Pierre took so long. He tweeted other subjects before he got to that. I'm just surprised he didn't proactively take hold of this right away. And usually that's what you have to do.
Okay. It's been more than 2 weeks since news hit about Bell Media's decision to part ways with news anchor Lisa LaFlamme. It's still making news.
Yeah.
The executive that is apparently behind the decision is on leave. The CEO of Bell Inc., not Bell Media, but the mothership, Bell Inc., Mr. Bibic, says the decision had nothing to do with Lisa LaFlamme's gender, the fact that Lisa LaFlamme has gray hair. Nothing to do. It's all about the future direction of the news industry and the fact that it's non-linear now. Nobody's staying up till 11 o'clock at night to watch the news. So how can Bell make this right, Barry?
Well, first of all, it's a recognition of now the issue has been framed, the way women on-air journalists are being treated. That's become the framed issue. It happened very, very quickly. I think Bell, I'm very, very surprised that BCE Inc. doesn't have better advice and execution when it comes to things like this. They've watched this from the get-go. You even have the vice president of BCE Inc. or Bell, head of Bell Media, saying that, Mr. Melling took leave for family reasons. And then Mr. Bibic, the very same day, posted that he's standing down pending a review, a workplace review. Well, which is it? Like, you got to get the same message right. So I think the total cross currents of messaging, the delaying her announcement until they could announce her replacement, usually that's seen as a very clever tactic. Don't just do bad news, also have good news. We've got Omar Sachedina. Oh, wow, that's great. No, I'm sorry. That was wrong. They mishandled it. She jumped them and jumped forward on this and was able to own the story right out of the gate. This has been horrible, and it looks like they have to wait for the end of the workplace review now. I think they have to move rapidly.
Okay.
They have to move rapidly.
Okay. Well, another Pride parade has come and gone, and Catherine McKenney's contingent at Pride, very impressive. Almost like a political parade. My impression is the McKenney campaign is really running away with this mayor's race right now. Seems to have all the momentum. What do the other campaigns have to do to make up the ground here?
Well, Rob, first of all, I am on the Sutcliffe campaign, so I have to declare that. Let me put it this way. I don't think it's the case, by the way.
Okay.
She's been on running for this pretty well for a year now. She's had a full year to get her act together, or they have been running for a year now. I think you're already seeing Mark. He had a good presence at the Pride parade. He was there throughout it. He had his own booth on it. And I think that is a little bit of an overstatement. Also, secondly, it boils down to this. I think people will be making their decisions based on the core commitments of the candidates. And Mark has begun rolling out his campaign, a very strong environmental policy last week. He's starting to roll them out. You're going to see a very strong platform. And he began with the environment, and he's moving into the other key issues. So I think who captures the concerns and aspirations of the people of this city, and it's not going to be calling for a $900,000 study of whether or not we have free transit, defunding police possibilities. That is not what Mark Sutcliffe stands for. And I think it's going to boil down to when people focus on what are the issues of concern to them, their families, and their communities, they're going to choose Mark Sutcliffe.
Okay. We'll see. It's going to be a fascinating race to watch, that one. Thank you, Barry.
Thank you, Rob.
Bye-bye. Barry McLoughlin. Here every week with us to talk about leadership and communications. He's with Transformational Leadership Consultants, TLC. The Talkback Hour next at 750-1310 on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Being a crossing guard works great as part of my schedule as a high school student because I still have time to do my tests and assignments while earning a little bit of cash on the side.
Working as a crossing guard fits into my current lifestyle because it gives me a lot of time during the day to pursue hobbies that I'm very interested in.
A friend of mine introduced me to this job. I didn't know it was actually a paid job.
I always start my day. It's a very little, I guess, few months baby, and she always comes with her dad on a pram, and the smile she has, like, oh my God.
Well, I think the OSC is a very good employer. They show quite clearly that they care about you. They're very polite.
They really make you feel like you're part of a family.
It's fun. I really enjoy it.
Gets us out of the house, too.
Yeah.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, August 29th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now, it's feeling in the low 30s, 23 degrees in Ottawa, 24 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The pandemic is not over yet, and there are concerns back to school could lead to yet another wave of COVID-19. The director of the Ontario COVID-19 Science Advisory Table, the director is Dr. Fahad Razak, and he tells City News it's going to be a challenging fall.
With the school year, with the amount of virus that's circulating, depending on if you look at the number of tests that are positive right now or the number of people in hospital, we may have 5 up to 10 times higher levels right now, August 2022 versus August 2021.
Now, although it's not mandatory, he does recommend people continue wearing masks in the classroom. All power has been restored in the area affected by an equipment failure this morning. About 500 customers affected in the Old Innis, Sheffield, Lancaster, Blackwell, and Bantry area. City News Time, 10:02, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Mainly cloudy conditions for most areas, some sunny breaks, and heads up for scattered thunderstorms, and especially as we head into the evening. The high today, 31 degrees, will feel like 39, 22 for the overnight low. More thunderstorms through the evening. For today, the high, 31.
Well, feeling warmer than the air temperature right now, 23 degrees in Ottawa, 24 in Smiths Falls. Canadians are growing increasingly angry at everything from high prices for gas and food to the Freedom Convoy this past February. Here's City News reporter Kevin Meisner.
We have heard the comment come up in conversation quite a bit lately. A lot of people have probably heard it. There seems to be a lot of angry people out there these days. Well, this survey seems to pinpoint that by Polera, the Insights research group, saying that it does find that inflation is the number one irritant for Canadians, irking about 83% of us. 78% of respondents say they feel angry over high gas prices. Even though it happened months ago, 64% of Canadians are still frustrated over the so-called Freedom Convoy that shut down Ottawa for weeks and actually blockaded the Ambassador Bridge. Delays at Pearson Airport and the housing market also on this list of the things that get under our skin. 48% of people are angry at the federal government. 49% are miffed by the Ontario government. Kevin Meisner, City News.
City News time, 10:04. The third and final phase of the public inquiry into the worst mass shooting in our country in Nova Scotia will open today. It's a review of more than 2,000 recommendations from 71 other reports. Those reports came from other inquiries and reviews and could provide meaningful recommendations to help make communities safer. Deadline for the inquiry final report extended by 5 months. It's now due at the end of next March. You can blame a fuel leak and an engine problem on the rocket NASA planned to launch today being scrapped. The issues forced the cancellation of the launch in today's window, which did close at 10:30 this morning. The next launch attempt will not take place now until Friday at the earliest. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
on The Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
So to me, and in my own opinion, it's kind of a news story in 3 parts. And part 1 is just the video and watching it and your reaction to it. That's part 1. Your reaction to the video of a man in Grande Prairie, Alberta, berating Chrystia Freeland in the City Hall in Grande Prairie, Alberta, using very vile language. So there's that. Then there's part 2 is where's the security detail? And do you think someone with the kind of profile of a deputy prime minister, in this case, it's Chrystia Freeland, but, the Deputy Prime Minister of Canada, the Minister of Finance in the Canadian government, I think that kind of responsibility deserves a constant security detail in this day and age. I mean, around the clock, 24/7. It's totally absent. And part 3 is Pierre Poilievre was asked about this incident, even getting some of the blame for it. And I would like to know your thoughts on his answer when he was asked about it by a news reporter. Whether you think his campaign bears any responsibility for what happened in Grande Prairie, Alberta. This was the political story of the weekend, continues to be the political story. I think a video that went viral. I don't care what your political stripe is. I don't see how anyone can defend this kind of thing. This kind of verbal abuse, physical intimidation, targeted. They went there looking for Chrystia Freeland. That's my opinion. I want to know your opinion. I should really play the uncensored video, but I'm not going to do that because it would be the last clip I had ever played on the radio. But for the full effect, to really understand just how vile this person's comments were, I should play the thing uncensored, but I'm not going to. I spent some time editing this clip this morning just to bleep out the bad words. It was quite a job to do that this morning. But just to set the scene for you, in case you haven't been following this story, because it was a weekend thing, it was a social media-driven thing, maybe you missed it. Chrystia Freeland, Deputy Prime Minister of Canada, Minister of Finance of Canada, in Grande Prairie, Alberta, at the City Hall in that city. Video looks like it's filmed by a woman who is with this man, cheering on this man, participating in the verbal abuse being launched by this man. And Minister Freeland is waiting for the elevator, along with some other people, I assume they are staff, associates of the minister. And the minister gets into the elevator, and this guy, a very large man, with a ball cap and a beard, ratty shirt and blue jeans, he goes into this tirade. He calls her every name in the book. Says, get out of Alberta, you're a traitor. The woman says, you don't belong here. You'll hear that on the tape. You don't belong. And I mean, he is mad. He is mad. He calls her the C word. He calls her the B word. He uses the F word over and over and over again. finally, once the elevator closes, someone shows up and tells the guy to leave. And he leaves. And there's a longer version of the clip where the two people who did this, they're kind of congratulating each other in the parking lot for a job well done, and how they can't believe their luck that they went to City Hall looking for Chrystia Freeland, and lo and behold, who's standing right there? Chrystia Freeland waiting for the elevator. Who could ask for anything more? So I'm going to play this for you. I believe I've managed to catch most of the bad words. It's still pretty bad. To think that someone would think it's the right and proper thing to do to talk to a politician this way and scream at a politician this way. That a man and a woman would talk this way, videotape it, toss it up on social media, and then be proud about it and brag about it. The lobby of the City Hall of Grand Prairie, Alberta, roll tape.
Cheers. Elias. Great, that's Christina.
Chrystia! Yes. What are you doing in Alberta? You get out of this province!
You don't belong here.
You're a you.
Yeah, go ahead and hide.
All right, guys, you got a trade elevator. Chrystia Freeland, I'm going. No. I'll walk up with my own power. Don't touch me, okay? Don't touch me. Go.
We are leaving.
Touch me.
We are leaving.
Do you love that? Do you love her? Do you love Chrystia Freeland?
No. Get.
Don't tell me to get. I'll walk up with my own power, okay? So back off.
Okay. What do you think of that? I'll tell you what I think. I think it's terrible. I think it's scary, too. I think it's scary. I understand some people are angry. I understand people in Alberta are very angry, but I don't think there's any excuse for that kind of behavior and that kind of language. He's a big man. He's a very large man. Very intimidating. Not someone I'd want to peeve off. Okay? Chrystia Freeland is there, and it looks like, to me, she has no protection whatsoever. And I think that's an important part of the story. I'd like to get your thoughts on that. She can only wait for that elevator door to close. Second most powerful politician in the country. Brian in Burgett. Good morning, Brian.
Hey, morning, Rob.
Hi.
Well, we'll deal with the easy one first. Where was her security detail? Well, somebody should be asking the RCMP, because I thought that was mandatory for cabinet ministers to have a security detail.
Okay. Well, obviously she doesn't have a 24/7 security detail. They would have been there. You would think they would have stepped in and put a stop to that pretty quick. But let me ask you this: do you think, whether it's Chrystia Freeland or not, the Deputy Prime Minister of Canada, who doubles as the Minister of Defence, do you think someone in that job should have 24/7 security?
Yeah, I would think.
Yeah, I would think so too. Yeah. Okay.
Anyways,
Yep.
the other part of it is it appropriate? Hell no, it's not appropriate. I mean, that's beyond the pale.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
It really is. And as one of my old military buddies would say, you cannot fix stupid. That pretty well tells the tale there. However,
can you fix angry?
No.
No.
Well, maybe you get rid of this government, you'll make it a little better in Alberta, but
maybe.
The long and the short of it is I don't see a criminal offense here.
You don't? Okay.
It's vile.
Yeah.
It's totally inappropriate. It's stupid. Just about everything else you want to call it, but it's not criminal. So, you know,
all right.
Now they want to make hurt feelings or that sort of thing criminal. That would be really scary.
Okay, I wonder if it is criminal. Harassment? You know, is it harassment? Maybe it amounts to harassment. You know,
harassment has to be ongoing.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Then I don't see it, but you know, get her security detail out there and keep the loony bin people away from her.
Okay. Thank you, Brian.
You know?
Thank you. It's good to hear you denounce it. Thank you. In Hull, Kevin. Morning, Kevin.
Good morning.
Yeah. Hi there, Kevin. Yeah.
Hi there. I'm with you on the easy two, terrible, scary, perfect. words and yes to more security detail, but
like a 24/7 security detail is what I think.
would say if
at her office, at her house, wherever she goes. I know it can't be nice, but come on, this is the year 2022.
If Pierre Trudeau has 50, then Justin, then he could spare 6, and she could have two around the clock for sure. If that's what it takes with a shortage. But Taliev definitely deserves some blame, and I'll tell you why.
Blame, okay.
And then that's because the fomenting of the media is the enemy of the people, the fake news, whether at his rallies, one of the biggest chances, defund the CBC the other day. I think it was a Globe reporter he referred to it, you're a so-called reporter. So as you do this and discredit the media, then the people are more driven to go into their bubbles of crazy websites where then they come out, with various ideas that think everyone's a traitor.
Well, let's listen to it. We have Pierre Poilievre. Pierre Poilievre has asked this by a news reporter of what he would consider to be the liberal mainstream media of Check News in Victoria. Roll tape on that, please.
Well, it's absolutely unacceptable, and I can relate, of course, because I've been the subject of so much online harassment and abuse. My wife has received so much horrific material directly to her social media account that we've had to hire a private security firm to protect our family against all of that abuse. So unfortunately, this is all too common and all too long-standing. We have to put an end to it and demand that everybody...
Thank you. Absolutely unacceptable, all too common. We have to put an end to it. What's wrong with that?
Well, I have to agree with your previous guest that instantly he goes on to Me Too, poor me. I have to agree with that point.
Right, but he reveals that he's had to hire a private security firm.
Yeah, so he waited till this incident happened to reveal that notably. Okay. To me, it kind of reminds. It's like a movie I've seen before. I'm the least racist person ever, and then very fine people on both sides.
Oh, okay.
Same sort of thing.
Fine people on both sides. Okay, thank you. Bad hombres.
Yeah.
Bad hombre. Okay, thank you. Okay. Charlotte Lake. Kevin, good morning. Kevin.
Good morning, Rob.
Hi. Your thoughts on the video, please. What do you think of what that man is saying to Christopher Freeland in that video?
I think it's a little aggressive.
Okay.
I think we can't use his size against him because I think it's verbal assault. So, if there's a little old lady yelling the same thing, we'd context it a little differently. So I wouldn't call it harassment, but there's definitely some anger behind his words. And I think for a lot of the Canadians, they feel that anger. So I think...
He calls her the C word.
Would be better.
He calls her the C word.
Like
calls her the B word, the C word.
Yeah, so it's
get the F out of Alberta.
Which isn't okay.
Calls her a traitor. You think that's all right?
No, I don't think that's all right. Well, I would say traitor is an interesting word because I could get behind that one. But all the other hurtful words, no one deserves that. But
what do you mean a traitor? What do you mean? What do you mean you can get behind that one?
Well, here we are in Canada. We have shortages everywhere, like all of our systems. The LRT thing, there's no accountability. We pay the government. There should be a glass house of transparency. Pierre gets up and goes, I just want a number. Right. And she just does that smug smile. Everyone loves that little
smug. But you're talking about like treason and traitor. What do you do with traitors who commit treason?
Well, that's the thing. We need accountability. Like, we give $3 billion to Ukraine, and we don't have hospital beds. Like, we stand with Ukraine because we can't lay down in a hospital bed.
Well, I would like to think that we could help Ukraine fight against Russia and provide hospital beds at the same time. I don't think it has to be a case of either or. Myself.
We're also short on police officers and firefighters, and you name the list. Like Canada's in a very tough spot right now.
Right.
And, Canada will get through it.
Okay.
But I think part of the problem is what the government's actions have been in the last 2 years. Like, if we're using hurtful language to the politicians, what have they called unvaccinated people through the last 2 years? The Toronto Sun said no hospital beds for unvaccinated people. Our Prime Minister called us racist and stuff like that. So I think you have to cut it out of the media and from the top.
Yeah, it sounds to me like you have sympathy. You have sympathy for how this guy's feeling.
No, I have sympathy for how he's feeling, but he needs to get his anger under control. Maybe he needs a few therapy classes or something. But I think all Canadians just want to.
Okay, let me ask you this. It was a verbal assault, but and you, whatever, verbal assault. What if it went beyond that? She's just kind of stuck there in an elevator, waiting for the elevator door to close. For all intents and purposes, she's a sitting duck right there.
Well, I think Canadians, if they see something wrong doing, they'll step in. I think no one's going to let someone get hurt like that in a public setting. You got to. You
don't think
Canadians
so?
More.
How long would it take? Think about it.
Yeah,
okay.
You're absolutely.
All right. What did you think of? What did you think of the Poilievre answer?
I think he was just honest and truthful. I don't think he really wants to dive into it too much. It's kind of a conflict of interest. But I think he was honest. It's happening. It's getting worse in Canada.
Yeah.
And yes, security is needed. Unfortunately, the tides have changed in the last couple of years, and people are getting a little more angry. So people need to protect themselves, and that's going to be a cost to the taxpayers. But I'd like transparency, and I'd also like to protect the politicians. But the transparency is upsetting a lot of people. We have
all right. Gotcha, Kevin. Gotta go. Thank you. Goodbye. Gotta run. Bye. Yep. We'll be right back. Rob Snow Show, Talkback Hour. This is City News.
The sun is calling. Change with the warning. I won't win anything.
I was so excited when I found out that I was given this grant to be able to make this concert, because I knew it was going to be the first opportunity that I was able to play these songs for others. This album was recorded really, truly in isolation. Like everybody else, we were locked down for a bit. So you're going to see, I think, the joy of playing live, of being together.
For me, as someone who owns a business in Ottawa that's directly working with music, I own a recording studio, it is important because it gives a sense of confidence in terms of having support from a lot of different places. We all know in Canada, there are all kinds of city, provincial, and federal people who provide funding for artists, and just seeing how invested Ottawa is and expanding the reputation of Ottawa as a music and entertainment city, running a business in that city, it makes you just feel better that someone's going to support you, help you, and have your back.
Well, firstly, I'm seeing friends that I haven't seen in 2 years, so that is kind of stabbing me in the heart a little bit, but I'm also just so happy to be able to make art with all of these friends again. And I've been treated like an absolute rock star from the moment I just kind of knocked on the door and said, hey, can I unload my gear? Everybody's so helpful, and you're just used to kind of dragging all your stuff around, and it's such a hard business to be in. So this is a dream come true for any local artist who gets to participate in a series like this.
Oh, I feel like I need to keep pinching myself. It's an amazing experience and opportunity for us, so thank you so much. It's been a long couple months. Our last show was in December. This is the first time we've actually been in the same room together since. So it's really an amazing opportunity for us, and the beautiful theater, and to have Rogers here, and thank you, Oh Mike, and so it's a dream come true.
I'm here with one of my best friends, Alex, and we haven't performed in almost 2 years because of COVID. And it feels really good to be back on a big stage like Meridian, and I'm really honored that you guys invited me here today.
Having an organization that lets the artists do their thing with such a range of styles and influence, and to kind of have that ability to meet the public and to meet the people who would listen to them, can't be overstated. So super excited about it. I know a lot of musicians in town and a lot of music lovers in town who are really excited about it too. So I mean, it's an event in which there's talk, there's a lot of buzz around it, and I wouldn't be surprised if it goes on for a long time and does a lot of great things for local musicians and connecting them with the listeners that love them.
Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Talking about the Freeland video, and in Christian Freeland, I mean, whatever party she belongs to. I don't care what you think about the policies that have been put in place. Really, that's not what this is about, I don't think. She is who she is, and she is a very prominent person in Canada with 2 big jobs that come with very big challenges, a very high profile, makes you a lot of enemies. And the idea that she is doing this job, to me, she doesn't have security with her everywhere she goes, at every hour of the day and night, to me, man, you are inviting trouble. You heard this guy and how angry he is. Let's play it again. He goes up one side of her and down the other, calls her every name in the misogynist dictionary. Roll tape again on that. Okay.
Cheers, Elias. Great, that's Christina.
Christina, what are you doing in Alberta? You get out of this province.
You don't belong here.
You're a here. You
Yeah, go ahead and hide.
all right, guys, you got a trade elevator. Christina Freeland, I'm going. No. I'll walk up with my own power. Don't touch me, okay? Don't touch me. Go.
Yeah, like after the door closes on the elevator. Like where's the security detail? RCMP detail, the second most powerful political person in the country? And people like this can just walk right up to the second most powerful person in government and just hurl this kind of vitriol at them? Can't have that going on. Happening all the time, increasing frequency. People feel they can do whatever they want, say whatever they want. No consequence. Someone's going to get hurt. Jason in Stittsville. Jason.
Hey, good morning, buddy.
Hi.
I can't believe it's possible that, I mean, obviously it happened, but that she had no security. Like, I went into Constellation Avenue last week to pay a parking ticket.
Right.
And there was like 5 police officers right at the front desk, you know, sitting right at the front door of City Hall. Then you go in and there's special constables standing by the windows where you pay your tickets. You know, like this is Grand Prairie City Hall. And like you said, she's the deputy. Like, I'm no fan of Freeland.
Sure. Yeah.
But like, that's crazy. I mean, you know, if there had been one police officer there, we're talking about some guy yelling profanities at a politician. You know what I mean? But the fact that he was able to get that close to her, and again, I cannot stand Chrystia Freeland, but that can't happen. How does that happen?
How does that happen?
We're a G7
Great
country.
question.
She's like the vice president, basically. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's not. Like, you know, Kamala Harris has Air Force Two. You know? Like, how does that happen?
How does that happen? Yeah.
But I like what you said, because that being said, I totally condemn what this guy did. Nobody should be able to do that to anybody. But I do understand where the anger comes from. You know, there are people are angry, and I think, you know, this kind of behavior needs to be called out. But at the same time, we need to be talking about where it's coming from. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of people in this country feel, I don't know what it is. Well, maybe but, you know, whatever, they feel unheard, or they feel like they're not being served, or like, you know what I mean? Like, there are a lot of people that feel that way.
Okay.
And it feels like they just get sloughed off, and then they get grouped into this guy. You know what I mean? Like, you understand what I'm saying? Like, something like this happens, and it's kind of, I feel like it's used to say that, oh, these, like people that have legitimate grievances are no different than this big crazy dude that's calling the deputy PM. Like what Pierre said, like I was going through some stuff over the weekend, and like the things that people do say about his wife, it's just, you know, and now, you know, like there's a big portion of the media that's trying to kind of like
blame him for it. Blame it.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. That he's fanning the flames of it. Right. That's the allegation. That's what I read as the allegation. Okay. Garth in Nepean. Good morning, Garth.
Good morning, Rob.
Hi, Garth. What do you think of that video?
I condemn the actions of the gentleman from Alberta.
Well, the man from Alberta, the guy. I wouldn't call him a gentleman.
Yes.
The furthest thing from a gentleman.
And his wife. wife. There was two of them there. The use of profanity and the abusive language is definitely not acceptable.
Yeah.
But I don't think his intent was to physically injure her.
Well, we're lucky. She's lucky.
Well, he didn't charge at her. He stayed, he didn't go at her. He didn't threaten to kill her. But he was verbally abusive to her, which is totally...
yeah. What do you think about there's no security there?
Again, a lot of these politicians feel that they're safe within certain locations. She felt that she probably was safe going into a municipal building.
Yeah.
But I think they should
let's remove Chrystia Freeland's name from the position.
Yes.
The Deputy Prime Minister of Canada, the Minister of Finance, whoever has that job. Today it's Chrystia Freeland who has that job. Maybe after the next election it'll be somebody else has that job.
Well, they should
that job come with a security detail?
Maybe they should take a page from former Liberal Prime Minister Jean Chrétien and learn to apply the Shawinigan handshake.
Yeah, I don't know.
But yes, I think they should have more beefed up security. But that comes with the job. The fact is that there's going to be, at some point, someone's going to try, and that yes, her security details should be taken to task for maybe not.
Okay. Thank you, Garth. Be back after the news. This is City News.
Today is a very exciting day. We are officially opening the Interzip Rogers for the summer season of this year. Last year we were expecting to have maybe 20,000 people, and we actually had over 30,000 riders for the first year. So we're really excited to reopen this year.
That was epic and scary!
You have a really different perspective view-wise of the area we're in. So you have a clear view of the Parliament. Obviously you're crossing the river, and of course you're moving from a province to another, which is unique of this zip line. It doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. Rogers has been partners even before Interzip opened, actually. They were all in the first meeting we had with Rogers, and that for us was really a nice commitment. We're really fortunate to have Rogers with us, and on top of having Rogers, it's basically the name of the zipline, which is the Interzip Rogers, that is now pretty much renowned across the country.
Rogers Interzip is a great activity for people who live in or visit the National Capital Region. Get out and have an opportunity to zip across the Ottawa River between Ottawa and Outaouais.
News in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, August 29th. Good morning. I am Damilola Unime. Right now in Ottawa, mainly sunny, 24 degrees. In Smith Falls, it is 25. And here's what's making news this hour. Power has been restored to the over 500 residents who lost power in the Alta Vista area. Hydro Ottawa was experiencing an equipment-related power outage in the Old Innis, Sheffield, Lancaster, Blackwall, Bantry areas earlier this morning. Crews performed an emergency switching to restore service to all affected customers. It's back to class for most school-age kids next Monday, with some kids returning to school tomorrow. This has the soon-to-be-altered COVID-19 science advisory table in our province a little worried. While masks are no longer mandatory in schools, Dr. Razak recommends people who are worried about the risk to wear them. And NASA has called off today's planned launch of its New Moon rocket because of a few leaks and an engine problem, and won't try again until Friday at the earliest. The rocket was set to lift off with 3 test dummies aboard on a mission to propel a capsule into orbit around the moon. Today's problems were reminiscent of NASA's space shuttle era, when hydrogen fuel leaks disrupted countdowns and delayed a string of launches back in 1990. City News time is 10:34. I am Damilola Unime. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
And as I said, it's a news story in 3 parts, and part 1 is just your gut reaction to seeing or hearing this video of this man in Grand Prairie, Alberta, just berating Chrystia Freeland. I mean, it's just one. It's one curse word after another. It's terrible. Part 2 is, should someone who has that kind of profile, Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, have a constant security detail? I mean, around the clock, 24/7. That does not appear to be the case here. And part 3 is how Pierre Poilievre comes into all this. I don't know, but I'd like your thoughts on his answer. The allegation is from his critics that his campaign bears some responsibility for what happened to Chrystia Freeland in Grand Prairie, Alberta. I guess I should just say this, okay? I would just remind you what happened in Japan. From what we have learned, the person who assassinated the former leader of Japan, Shinzo Abe, thought that Abe played some kind of role in the Unification Church, and that the Unification Church ruined his mother's life. That is apparently his motivation. And Abe was out campaigning, as is the tradition, no security around, and this guy walked up behind him and murdered him. What if this guy had a gun, okay, in Grand Prairie, Alberta? The Deputy Prime Minister is right there. The finance minister of this country, just standing there, taking this abuse with nothing to do but wait for the elevator door to close. That's the only refuge, is waiting for that elevator door to close. It's awful. 750-1310. Okay, the Poilievre clip. Let's play this Poilievre clip. Okay, he was asked by a radio reporter on the West Coast, because the allegation is the tone of the Poilievre campaign is contributing to this sort of stuff, people attacking politicians, people attacking journalists. I'd like to know what you think of that allegation. His critics aren't happy with his answer because they say, well, he never mentions Chrystia Freeland, and he says it's unacceptable, and then he completely makes it about him and his wife, his family. Roll that, please. Thank you.
Well, it's absolutely unacceptable, and I can relate, of course, because I've been the subject of so much online harassment and abuse. My wife has received so much horrific material directly to her social media account that we've had to hire a private security firm to protect our family against all of that abuse. So unfortunately, this is all too common and all too long-standing. We have to put an end to it and demand that everybody treat other Canadians with respect when we debate political ideas.
Okay. All right. Totally unacceptable. It's absolutely unacceptable, he said. Mike in Orleans, thank you for waiting. Good morning. You're on City News.
Well, thank you for taking my call today.
Pleasure. Go ahead.
Anyhow, the situation that we've seen speaks to volumes about what's been going on with politics. But having said that, number one, All sides have to check their egos at the door. All sides have to take a time out today. Having said that, a reminder of what was happening was both vile and vulgar on both counts. It was very vulgar, yes. But let's not forget the bigger part of the story. You remember Premier Ford couldn't even get out of his own house, let alone anything. People in Etobicoke couldn't get out, and there was, people wanted to take some liberties at his area. Consider, too, that if we had Stephen Harper, there was a situation just over the last number of years where a group of people wanted to take some individual liberties on the Prime Minister. Would you not agree?
Well, I remember one specific incident. Mr. Harper was in Vancouver. He was on a stage doing some kind of event. I can't remember specifically what the event was about. And you had these protesters. They dressed up as staff at the event facility. They dressed up as waiters and waitresses and whatnot, and they came out. They were within feet of the Prime Minister. They unfurled some kind of banner and thought it was a big
that's right,
joke. But again, I was talking about that at the time where it was the security. That was a major security lapse at the time.
I met the Prime Minister Harper a number of years ago at a Red-Black game, and my brother said, you want to shake hands with him? Well, I was tired that day. I was the supervisor over at the Morissette Library until recently, but working with others, went on vacation. But having said that, we do need more security because for the simplest reason, it speaks to the job, it speaks to the problems that we're seeing. But as I say, two wrongs do not necessarily make a right. All sides have to check their ego at the door.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay.
And as for Pierre Poilievre and his situation, I will say that he didn't say her name per se, but it speaks to the abuse that it does have on families, because you've got to remember people have families at the end of the day, and it's hard on the wife or the spouse or on the kids. But you know what? All politicians are in this together. It's like they're not there to be a friend. They're there to do a job. I worked at one time at Fisheries and Oceans, and I met a number of cabinet ministers in the Mulroney era. And as a mail, I was delivering the mail for a man in my 20s, and you got to say hi, how are you? But things have changed in the last 30 years.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Bye-bye.
For your call. Yeah, Michelle in Ottawa South. Good morning.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Brian Mulroney, but I'd start with going back to Pierre Elliott in the stadium where he's pelted with beer bottles. But very much today it's a cultural thing to be vulgar and disrespectful. It's on the movies, it's in the shows, it's in the music. And what Pierre Elliott Trudeau did was when he drove through Western Canada and he held up his middle finger. It was such an obnoxious response, and it went into the culture. And eventually it just, you behave the same way, then you can't criticize. Brian Mulroney, when he went to Wabash, Newfoundland in 1984, and when he said it's going to take more than a couple of malcontents to shout me down, well, there was 150 people screaming him down, and the difference was he was always shepherded with a police detail, right? And so we move ahead. It's not new for political people to take this type of abuse. We had Catherine McKenna recently. We had Lisa McLeod. It just goes on. And the question is, what kind of person do you want to represent yourself as? And apparently the guy with the vulgar, filthy mouth could care less what anybody thinks of him.
Okay. What do you think of the lack of security there for her?
Well, that's what I'm going to tell you, is that I live in Alta Vista, and I was really surprised because Herb Gray used to stroll by my house every day, just saunter along with his hands behind his back, take a little afternoon stroll. And I was always so surprised because there are a lot of very prominent political people in this area. And if I lived in the United States, if I had a former vice president who lived, there'd be a detail with him.
Yeah.
And same with the president. And we don't think like that.
But should she?
If I was her, I most certainly would want one, just for the safety. And, I hate to add this other layer, but she's also Ukrainian, and there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, that's a good point, yeah.
And the mother of my children, I would say, you know what, dear, it's high time, whether you like it or not, you feel your privacy, it's your safety, and it's going to prevent something awful. Let's hope it never comes to that, but no, it's not proper. And, I even when I watched Justin Trudeau go to CARP when the flood was happening and the man was, what are you doing here for your photo op and your filming? And Justin Trudeau reached over and grabbed the guy's arm and started talking to him. I thought, you crossed the line there, because if I can't touch you, you can't touch me either. So a lot of this stuff that we melt into our culture. We just accept it when it happens. No, there's not two rules for everybody. And if your security's in danger, some preventative measures should be taken before something.
What did you think of what Pierre Poilievre said?
I think Pierre Poilievre's absolutely right, and I don't know why they pull him into it, and I think his answer was clear and concise.
Okay. All right, Michelle, thank you. Thank you. Yep, good. Yep, bye. Okay. In Canada, Chris.
Good morning. I definitely need today's day and age. I think I'm going to echo a lot of what Mr. McLoughlin said was the naivety of not having our public figures, especially the high-ranking ones, unprotected is a little silly. This guy approaching her and all your armchair police officers calling in, there's 515 pages in the Canadian Criminal Code, and there's a bunch of charges he could have been hit with. Disturbing the peace, uttering threats, you name it, and assault, which a lot of people don't know the definition. You don't have to make physical contact to assault someone. It's the beliefs of the person being assaulted. Now, if there's physical contact, you add battery to an assault. They're two different charges, but there's a lot of charges that she could have been hit with, and I think Poilievre could have stayed his focus on the individual incident and take it to his advantage in another day and bringing up protection for all of the public servants, not just putting it on himself.
Okay, Chris, thank you for your comment. Okay, 750-1310 for the first time. A couple of lines available. It's been very busy. The phones have been jammed all morning. But there are 2 free lines available for the first time, so you can have one if you're so inclined. Joanne in Orleans. Joanne.
Morning.
Hi.
Like many of your callers, I think it was totally acceptable, and that's no matter what your political stripes are.
Totally unacceptable, right?
And, liberals should not treat conservatives that way, and certainly conservatives should not treat liberals that way, or anybody. But really, I'm shocked at the fact that they're trying to turn the spotlight onto Poilievre's response. If he was... it was not a prepared statement, kind of just, I'm not sure if it was off the cuff. All I know is that we found out that he and his family have been subjected to this kind of abuse, and that...
yeah, and it's interesting, the response on social media to that is, he's making it all about him. And I'm like, well, yeah, but that's a pretty significant detail to me.
Well, I think personally, it could be just he was trying to illustrate the point that the political culture, it's gone beyond what's acceptable, and that he's the victim of some as well. So it's like across the board. He's trying to illustrate the point that this is across the board. But my Twitter feed was full of this other incident, which was the Liberals' decision to fund the anti-Semite, anti-French bigot, and that his organization has received oodles of money.
Yeah, $600,000, yeah.
Yeah, but no, there's more. Jonathan Kay has written about it in Cayette.
Yeah, it's about $600,000. I read that.
I'm sorry, you said 600. Yes, yes, exactly. Now, when you're talking about the security, the professor that you interviewed, I was gobsmacked. I don't know. I appreciated her measured approach. Like she didn't really go crazy against conservatives, which I would have expected a Carleton U professor to do. But she leveled an incredible insult, an enormous insult, in her very, casual answer when she said that Poilievre would win no favors condemning this behavior. Win no favors on his side with his supporters. I mean, give me a break. Is it any wonder that people are furious when you're getting constantly slammed, and it's so casual, it's so matter of fact that conservatives are, of course, we're abusive and bigoted, and of course we are prone to this kind of behavior. It's nonsense. Finally, I personally think that we heard that Poilievre and his family have had to hire private security, but we didn't hear a word about it till he just said it. If Freeland, as a woman, had said, I need security, I can assure you it would have unleashed the gates of hell, and we would have called her, a snowflake and privilege and, this, that, and the other. When, in fact, I wouldn't. It's a reflection of public sentiment, of a change in the culture.
Yeah.
I do believe that public sentiment now has changed. We are not going to balk at the cost, number one. Number two, it's not a matter of being a woman or a man. You're in public office, as you've pointed out all morning, you need security.
Yeah.
Because
you're a target. You're a target. Yeah. Okay. Great points. Thank you. No, I got to run. I'm way over time. Joanne, thank you. Be right back with the final segment of the Talkback Hour here on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Est-ce que je peux prendre ta commande? Est-ce que je peux prendre ta commande? Est-ce que tu peux me dire quoi faire d'une vie devenue carrière? Est-ce que je peux prendre ta commande? Est-ce que je peux savoir ton nom? Est-ce que je peux savoir ton nom? Est-ce que je peux connaître les vœux au fond de tes yeux quand on effleure nos ombres? Est-ce que je peux savoir ton nom? Ici les amours sont rares. Ici les amours sont rares. Ici les amours sont rares. Passe ça, jamais ton char. Ici les amours sont rares. Au drive-thru. Ici les amours sont rares. Est-ce que les mots vont me venir? Est-ce que les mots vont me venir? Est-ce que je vais finir par dire comment je me sens? Est-ce que je pourrais le faire rire? Est-ce que les mots vont me venir? Est-ce que les mots vont me venir? Ici les amours sont rares. Ici les amours sont rares. Ici les amours sont rares. Passe ça, jamais ton char. Ici les amours sont rares. Au drive-thru. Ici les amours sont rares. Ici les amours sont rares. Au drive-thru. Ici les amours sont rares.
The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Let's get some final closing comments here on the Talkback Hour on the Freeland video. Mo in Canada, you're on City News. Good morning, Mo.
Morning, Rob. How are you?
I'm okay, Mo.
Good.
If you've seen the video, if you've heard the video, what did you think of it?
Yes. I've been waiting to talk to you about this. I think it's horrible. Like you said, I think, how come there was no RCMP with her detachment in Grand Prairie, Alberta?
Right. Yeah.
Like they know she's in town.
Yeah.
And another thing, whatever he said, could you imagine if, I don't know if the woman that was with him was his wife or girlfriend or a sister or a partner, but if he can call another woman those names, what is stopping him doing that to her?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, could you imagine? He has a mother, he has a sister. He doesn't care. He looks like the 50-year-old Alberta grumpy or man that wants to disrespect women.
Yeah, just every name in the book. I mean, the C word, the B word, F this, F that.
And the woman that was with him, the lady that was with him, do you think that he's gonna treat her differently? He's gonna call her the same way.
Boy, oh boy, they seem to be as thick as thieves. Those two, though, they're
yes,
because on the extended clip, they're out on the parking lot, congratulating one another.
Yes, and Rob, another thing, if you would have done that, and people saw it, families, everyone will tell you that, Rob, you're wrong.
Oh, yeah, that'd be it.
And you're not that kind of person that will do that.
No.
I know you're not that kind of person that...
Yeah. All right, Mo, thank you. Gotcha.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Up next is Andrew in Canada. Andrew.
Well, good morning, Rob. This will be a short call because I think Joanne raised the main point I wanted to raise, but I think everyone is obviously going to be offended and disgusted by what they witnessed or heard in the video.
Mm-hmm.
Really, the point, though, is are we being consistent in our outrage?
Okay.
And in our criticism?
Okay.
Joanne raised the issue of the hundreds of thousands of dollars going to a rabid anti-Semite.
Yeah.
To do
the racist, anti-racist. Yeah.
Racist in the fullest, openly calling for violence.
Yeah.
Against Jews.
Yeah.
That was not only that received funding from the federal government. So we have, violence and really the question of where has civility gone in our society stems. You've got the obvious stuff, which we saw in Alberta, totally disgusting, totally unacceptable.
Right.
But then we can also have a kind of institutional, sort of fomented kind of incivility and obviously it was somebody in Heritage Canada that determined that this was a legitimate expenditure of taxpayer dollars. So if we're going to have a kind of campaign against this growing incivility in our society, which I absolutely support, we have to be consistent in our outrage. And when we see it either on because right now, let's be honest, all of the outrage that is associated with this Alberta incident has connections to the broader defined sort of convoy protest reality in our country right now. We saw expressions of it, in the last couple of weeks here in Ottawa with the St. Bridget's issue, that a kind of mob mentality emerges against it, but we're not seeing the same outrage when it's equally, if not more offensive, coming from our actual institutions. So let's be equal in our outrage.
Gotcha, Andrew. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Sharon in Bell's Corner. Sharon.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Sharon.
Well, obviously, anybody would be, crackers if they didn't think that video was absolutely disgusting. So, I think most people are calling it down for what it is. As to background, though, I think society in general has become so uncivil with each other, on social media especially.
Okay.
And in Parliament, I mean, Trudeau has set the stage so often for calling me names. He likes to call all of us racist if we don't agree with him. And I think, he has set the stage for so much incivility towards people that I think he really does carry some of the blame. He needs to change his ways.
Okay.
And on Pierre, I didn't know that, he had some problems with security issues.
Says he's had to hire a security firm. Yeah.
I don't think what he said there was anything wrong with it. He was just being honest. He called it out for what it is, and it's no worse having somebody yelling and cursing at Christopher Phelan than it is when they did it to Jagmeet Singh. I mean, it's disgusting, and the people think that they can get away with that in society today. Tells you how low society has sunk. But, Trudeau himself used the F word in Parliament, bumped that NDP lady because he, was being impatient. Yeah. So I do blame him a lot for the total negativity between politics.
He's in no position to lecture anyone.
No, he isn't,
right.
And it is really, really, I think, ruining the whole outlook on politics and making people become disinterested because. It's all too negative, and they're all the same, and all this sort of comments, and he needs to take a hard look in the mirror and quit name calling and do what's right for the country.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Thank you for all your calls. We're right at a time. Wow, what an hour that was. We'll pick it up after the news. On Wednesday, it will be the 25th anniversary of the death of Princess Diana. We'll talk about that with Geoffrey Johnston from the Kingston Whig Standard on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
One for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, August 29th. Good morning. I am Damilola Unime. Right now in Ottawa, it is 24 degrees, feels like 32. In Smiths Falls, it is 25, but feels like 34. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The federal government is considering all options to better protect politicians from harassment following an incident in Alberta targeting the Deputy Prime Minister. City News Parliamentary reporter Cormac McSweeney with the story.
Politicians of all stripes have been condemning the incident, calling it unacceptable, adding this is a verbal attack not just on a politician, but on our democracy. And now Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino says he's considering all options and is in contact with RCMP and other law enforcement agencies to make sure our politicians stay safe. He did not elaborate on the measures that could be taken, but he was questioned about whether there should be bodyguards for every cabinet minister. Video circulating online shows Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland on Friday at the Grand Prairie City Hall when a man approaches her yelling profanities, calling her a traitor and following her to an elevator that she entered with her staff. Other ministers like Karina Gould say they have had to get RCMP protection in the past and that threats and intimidation of politicians and journalists, specifically with women and people of color, is a disturbing rising trend in our country. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
And with the weather forecast for Ottawa and the Valley, here is City News meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Mainly cloudy conditions for most areas, some sunny breaks, and heads up for scattered thunderstorms, and especially as we head into the evening. The high today, 31 degrees, will feel like 39, 22 for the overnight low. More thunderstorms through the evening. For today, the high, 31.
City News time is 11:03. The pandemic is not over yet, and there are concerns that back to school could lead to another wave of COVID-19. The director of the Ontario COVID-19 Science Advisory Table, Director Dr. Fahad Razak, tells City News it's going to be a challenging fall.
With the school year, with the amount of virus that's circulating, depending on if you look at the number of tests that are positive right now or the number of people in hospital, we may have 5 up to 10 times higher levels right now, August 2022 versus August 2021.
Although it's not mandatory, he recommends people continue to wear masks in the classroom. A fuel leak and then an engine problem have forced NASA to scrap the launch of its new moon rocket on a no-crew test flight. The next launch attempt will not take place until Friday at the earliest. The 322-foot Space Launch System rocket was set to lift off earlier this morning from Florida with 3 test dummies aboard on its first flight, a mission to propel a capsule into orbit around the moon. I am Damilola Unime. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Geoffrey Johnston writes about international affairs for the Kingston Whig Standard and is with me every Monday morning. Good morning.
Rob, welcome back.
Well, it's great to hear from you, Geoffrey. Wow, I was stunned when you emailed me on the weekend and suggested that on Monday we speak about the legacy of Princess Diana, that on Wednesday it will have been 25 years since she died in the car crash in Paris. And I was like, wow, 25 years. Where has the time gone? That's one of, as I shared with the listeners this morning, it's one of those moments I remember exactly where I was. The moment that I heard it in my apartment, baseline near Pinecrest, 25 years ago, and my ex coming in and saying, she's died. The Princess Diana's dead. She's died in this car crash, and I couldn't believe it. I really couldn't believe it. Was just starting out at Algonquin College, learning how to work in the radio business back then. It was my first week of class was that week. Where were you?
I remember it very well. Likewise, it was one of those moments everybody of a certain age remembers. We were watching a late night movie, and my partner had fallen asleep on the couch, like it was an old Robert Mitchum movie. And then the network broke in suddenly and said that the Princess of Wales had been in a car accident, and her partner Dodi Al Fayed had been killed, and the princess had suffered a head injury or something, and it was very serious. And I kept watching it, and then it came on later that she died, and I couldn't believe it. It was one of those moments because she was so young at the time, and you thought, okay, she's starting this new life, and she's doing all her philanthropy, and she's got a full life ahead of her, and next thing you know, she's gone. It was quite shocking.
Very shocking. Very shocking. Leaves in international affairs, though, leaves behind a legacy. Not only her work and really groundbreaking work promoting the acceptance of HIV/AIDS patients, but also her work on trying to eradicate the world of landmines. And a number of years ago for the Kingston Whig Standard, I guess about 5 years ago, you were marking the 20th anniversary of the death of Diana. You wrote a column about this, how she advanced the landmine ban, and Canada played a role in that. So walk us through the history of her advocacy on the landmine issue.
Yes. So that was a big feature that I wrote for the Whig. It was to acknowledge the huge role that Princess Diana played in the international treaty to ban landmines. So in the 1990s, the Red Cross declared that landmines were a public health menace. And the problem with landmines is that they linger on years or decades after a conflict. And the people who end up by being killed by landmines and maimed by landmines are children and women, because, they mine fields, and, people go to get water, or farmers go out into the fields, or children are playing, and they're killed, or an arm or a leg are blown off, and their lives are changed forever. And Princess Diana was looking for an issue after her divorce to really focus on, and she got the permission of the Queen to do this advocacy. She was briefed by the British Foreign Ministry. At the same time, the Canadian government, the Chrétien government, realized that the international process to ban landmines at the United Nations, there's this UN disarmament process, and the great powers, the United States, China, Russia, Great Britain, France, they really weren't making any progress at all. And then Canadian Foreign Affairs Minister Lloyd Axworthy realized that there needed to be some sort of process outside of the UN to bring about progress on landmines. And so Canada started bringing together like-minded middle powers such as, Norway, the Netherlands, Mozambique, Chile, together with a groundswell of support from non-governmental organizations, civil society, to start this process known as the Ottawa process, to bring together...
It was called the Ottawa process.
It was called the Ottawa process.
The Ottawa process, okay.
Yes,
all right.
They held a conference in Ottawa to bring these people together. And this was in 1996 that they held this big conference. Lloyd Axworthy was in contact with Princess Diana and the work she was doing. Well, on January 15, 1997, Princess Diana was in Angola because she'd gone to Angola. She went to Bosnia because these are places that were heavily mined, and met with survivors. And in Angola on January 15th, 1997, Diana put on a protective shield, a blast jacket, and walked into a landmine with an expert. And this was very dangerous because they thought they'd cleared the entire field, but they weren't sure, and she helped the expert detonate a landmine. The photographers were there. The picture went out around the world, and this was a groundbreaking moment. Diana doing that, being in that field, she drew the world's attention to this. And I interviewed Lloyd Axworthy, and I said to him, what was your reaction when you saw in the newspaper the picture of Princess Diana, in that minefield? And his first reaction was, "Whoopee, that's like fantastic." He couldn't believe the impact this was going to have, because Axworthy told me that Diana had tremendous soft power. That is the power to change people's minds, to persuade people, and to bring attention to bear on this. And Diana's intervention in that created this groundswell of popular support for the landmine treaty, and it really started to pick up. And the Americans didn't want any part of the landmine treaty, and they just stood off to the side. Then all of a sudden, Washington started to pay attention, because now there were, over 100 countries very interested in this landmine treaty. And eventually what happened was the Americans started to warm up, and the Canadians, Axworthy and Chrétien, held off the signing ceremony for the international treaty to ban landmines for 36 hours while they negotiated with Bill Clinton. But at the last second, U.S. President Bill Clinton decided not to sign the treaty because he was under terrible pressure from the Pentagon and other, domestic sources.
Interesting.
But eventually...
Because I would think with the Clinton administration, like, the star power of Diana would be hard to resist, so...
Yes, yeah. and Axworthy told me, he goes, after Clinton left office, he met with Clinton a number of times, and Clinton expressed deep regret that he did not sign that treaty. To this day, the United States is not a member of the treaty. However, the United States is one of the top contributors to efforts to demine countries that have been mined in the past. So, as Lloyd Axworthy said, the Americans now live up to, over 90% of the conditions of the treaty. So I'm still hopeful that one someday the United States will sign on to the treaty that Diana helped make possible, because in 1997, 122 countries signed that treaty. Now, when Diana passed away, the very day that she died, Lloyd Axworthy had sent her a note to invite her to Ottawa for a big landmine meeting, and then he found out that she perished. The day of the funeral, Tony Blair, the then British Prime Minister, held a big luncheon for world leaders and foreign affairs ministers. And I asked Lloyd Axworthy, because they had not yet signed the treaty, I asked Lloyd Axworthy, I said, did you guys actually discuss the treaty? And he said, yes, we did, and we honored Diana, and they also moved the treaty forward. They didn't talk about the nitty-gritty details, but nevertheless, it was a very powerful time, because she just passed away. There was this huge initiative that she supported, and it created more momentum.
Right.
So
you have this treaty, and it's signed by 122 countries. It never happens without her, right?
Lloyd Axworthy wouldn't go that far, but let's put it this way.
Okay.
Normally, Rob, it takes 8 to 10 years to get a treaty hammered out. With this, it took 2 years, and that was because of Diana. 2 years.
Wow. Okay. Hey, let me ask you about a news story that everybody's talking about, and that's this Chrystia Freeland video. Certainly lots of opinions about it. I was encouraged, for the most part, the callers to my show, like universal denunciation of the content of this video. What's going on with this kind of stuff? You've been following this sort of thing?
Yeah, I've been following.
You've been subjected to it as well, I must say, on social media. So, just give me some thoughts on kind of where we are with this sort of vitriol.
Yeah, we're in a bad place in this country, and I think that we're now seeing, and I think this is the pernicious influence of social media, which is used to disseminate radical ideas. And so one of the crazy ideas that we see out there right now is there's some sort of large globalist conspiracy, and a lot of this is tied up with white supremacy and anti-Semitism and whatnot. So, for example, we hear all this stuff about the World Economic Forum and how this is, some sort of crazy plot to take over, the world. And, prime ministers have been going to the World Economic Forum for quite some time. Other world leaders, whatnot. But there's no counter to all of this. And then the next step is then we start demonizing our own politicians and saying they're pedophiles, which is sort of a QAnon influence from the United States, or they're traitors. And as soon as you start saying things like that, then you're going to get some really extreme people and some unbalanced people then, attacking or verbally assaulting members of the government and politicians. And when I watched that video, I cringed, and I was afraid for Deputy Prime Minister Freeland, and I was afraid for the women in that elevator. But I've got to say, those women were brave. They surrounded Deputy Prime Minister Freeland, and they protected her. And because that guy was huge, I would have been really intimidated if a guy like that out of the blue had come up to me and started screaming at me and swearing at me. And the fact is, I watched the entire video. He walks outside, and it was all staged, and he's laughing, and the person filming him said, "You did what you just wanted to do," and then they're using that video to gain more adherence. And I think we've got to look long and hard at extremism and people being radicalized in this country. I think it's a real problem.
Okay. Thank you, Geoffrey Johnston.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, we'll speak next week. From the Kingston Whig Standard, Geoffrey Johnston. From the Ottawa Business Journal, coming up next, some of the biggest news stories in town in the world of business with David Sali from the Ottawa Business Journal. I'm Rob Snow, and this is City News.
Riding requires attention and focus. No distractions, no moment of unawareness, because one brief moment can cost a lifetime of other moments. Everyone deserves to arrive home.
The Maritime Canadian provinces are home to some of the oldest settlements in Canadian history. But did you know that one of the first was actually started by black settlers? Take a minute to learn about the rise and untimely fall of Africville. Black people have lived in Nova Scotia since before the founding of Halifax in 1749, but it wasn't until after the American Revolution in the late 1700s and early 1800s that large groups of black settlers began to arrive in the province, many of whom were former slaves promised freedom and land in Nova Scotia. What they encountered when they arrived, however, was racist treatment by their white neighbors and government officials. This pushed many black people to build homes on the outskirts of town instead. But despite the area receiving little support from government officials and lacking necessities like functioning sewage systems, access to clean water, and proper garbage disposals, the tight-knit community persevered, and so Africville was born. For more than 150 years, the small community grew, expanding from just a few homes to a population of over 400 people. Everything changed, however, in 1964 when plans for a new bridge and the idea of urban renewal prompted the municipality to set its sights on Africville's land. Instead of investing in the community, officials approved a relocation program that promised free job training and employment assistance to help residents through relocation. But the reality wasn't so kind. Residents had their belongings moved in city dump trucks, and homes were demolished immediately after their owners left. Of the 400-plus people living in Africville, only 14 residents held clear legal titles to their land, so the rest were only given $500 with the promise of more social aid in the future. Not much else was actually done to support Africville and its residents until 2001, when a United Nations report called for reparations to be paid to the community. In 2010, Halifax Mayor Peter Kelly apologized for the atrocities against Africville as part of a $4.5 million compensation deal. In 2021, Councillor Lindell Smith put forward a 7-part motion to plan for the future of Africville alongside local organizations and the descendants of former residents. Today, there's a public park and museum where Africville once stood to teach visitors about the history of the land and its community. If you've never heard of Africville, you're not alone. The tragic story of this small black community in Nova Scotia is not as well known as it should be.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Dave Sali is back from the Ottawa Business Journal as we look back at some of the big business news stories in town. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob. It seems like it's been months since...
It has been. I think it has been months. Our vacations have not coincided, so it's been a while since we've been on the radio together. So, Best Places to Work in Ottawa competition is an annual program. It's organized by the Ottawa Business Journal and the Ottawa Board of Trade, and you can announce for us here on the Rob Snow Show some of the best places to work in Ottawa. Spill the beans.
Absolutely, Rob. Well, yes, I'm more than happy to. This is another very successful competition. It's very really. It creates it generates a lot of interest. We get a lot of applications, and this is basically what we do. Is we look at we actually contract a company, U.S.-based workforce research group, and this is what they specialize in.
Okay.
These employee and employer surveys, questionnaires that go out to both management and employees. Employees get to rate their workplace performance in all kinds of categories: leadership, corporate culture, job satisfaction, training, pay, benefits. The list goes on. And employers fill out quite an extensive questionnaire. I was looking at it last week. This goes into a lot of detail, Rob, on all kinds of benefits programs and all kinds of how workplaces try and address issues like work-life balance, diversity, making the employees stay as up to date on training as they can, and that they get offered opportunities to for career development. And so then we kind of crunch the numbers, or this company does, and they come up with a list of rankings of the top 10. And this year, it was led by the Attain Group. which was the first time. Remember, they're an engineering firm here in Ottawa. They've been around for a long time, for decades, and they're and basically they do communications, install communications technology, wireless networks, as well as cybersecurity systems, all that sort of stuff. So they came out on top, and I actually did talk to their CEO and President Derek Hansen last week. He was telling me, they've had up until a few months ago 100% retention rate essentially at the company. It's been around for 18 years. People love working there, so
no quitting or quiet quitting at the Attain Group.
Well, don't get me. I mean, that's a whole other issue. But so their headcount's tripled over the last few years, and your other companies on the list that we know. There's a lot of big tech companies, construction, and Ottawa Tourism comes in number 2. You've got
Ottawa Tourism. Ottawa Tourism comes in number 2.
Ottawa Tourism is number 2 on the list. Noibu, which is an e-commerce company, number 3. Fellow, which got tens of millions in VC funding last year. They're led by Aidan Merzey, a well-known entrepreneur. They're on there. Rossman Architecture. NAC, another company I profiled on Friday, and a marketing software company. Decisive Group, Dilfo Mechanical, Solink, another real rising video software star in town here, and Amstead Design Build rounds out our top 10. So they are going to be recognized actually at a cocktail reception at the West in Ottawa on October 4th, and that'll be a great event. Always is to great. It's really nice to be able to kind of celebrate employers that get it and that really try and go the extra mile to keep their employees happy and productive and all that good stuff. So we're really happy with this year's results.
Very cool companies.
Yeah.
Attain is, I'm just looking on their website here, the latest in building technology, wireless network, smart building security. So that's very cool. Fellow.app, I'm assuming that's the company, in Ottawa, Ontario.
Exactly, yeah.
And you're going to profile that company, you said? Is that right? No, NAC you're going to profile.
All of these, NAC I profiled on Friday.
Okay.
They just moved into a new office, or haven't moved in yet, but they put the sign up. They're going to be in a nice new office near Hunt Club Road, and that's, check that story out.
Fellow.app, and I look here, who is the president of Fellow.app? Harley Finkelstein. That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, he's very involved. He and Aidan, he's certainly been a key mentor for Aidan as he builds that company, which basically tries to make meetings more efficient. And who doesn't want that,
meeting software. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Online meeting software. And NAC. Let's make life easier for marketers. Okay.
Marketers. They help create landing pages, email campaigns, all that sort of stuff. They work with some huge companies around the world. They got $25 million US.
$25 million
last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're really rolling. Really interesting companies there.
Very cool companies. Yeah. All right. We're still pretty hip and happening here in the national capital with great places to work. That's all good. And as well, you can read in the Ottawa Business Journal this week about how bullish Morguard is on the Ottawa commercial real estate market.
Yes, absolutely, Rob. Morguard, they've been a big player in Ottawa for a long time. They are actually the second largest commercial real estate property management company after Colonnade Bridgeport. So they've got, just office holdings alone, 3.5 million square feet. They've got about 5.5 million square feet total in properties here in town, including Performance Court at 150 Elgin Street, which of course was best known for being Shopify's headquarters until a couple of years ago when they went virtual. But that office tower is very well known. They've got all kinds of properties though around town, and they've added to their footprint recently when they purchased 3199 Palladium Drive, which is fully occupied by Kinaxis. And we've talked a lot about Kinaxis. That's the supply chain software company. They're publicly traded. They are doing amazingly well, hiring. They can't hire fast enough, and so they needed more space. So they moved into this new. It was basically purpose built for them by Taggart Group, and it's 5 stories, 163,000 square feet in the Canada West Business Park. That's literally just about across the street from the Canadian Tire Center there, and it was that building. So Morguard bought that building just a few weeks back, closed from Taggart Group for $64.5 million, and this is just one more step for Morguard to try and keep adding, and they really like the Canada West region. They're thinking that it could be kind of a new emerging sort of offshoot of the Canada North tech hub, and so they're really happy to get in there. And even better for them, there's another 4 acres of development land right beside that Kinaxis building, where they plan to build another building that could be up to 150,000 square feet. And I was talking to their senior vice president, Tulio Kabuli, last week, and he said he was thinking, that maybe Kinaxis, if it keeps growing, maybe they'll want to move into another building right beside. So they're really hoping that this is the start of bigger things to come out there for them in Canada. And otherwise, they feel like things are looking good in the commercial real estate market overall. They feel like they're going to, so they're very bullish, and they just feel like there's plenty more opportunities for them to grow their footprint here as well.
All in all, very good news this week, David.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, very uplifting. Thank you so much. We can use more stories like that about the economy these days. That's very good stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you, Dave.
All right, Rob.
Yeah, speak soon. From the Ottawa Business Journal, that's David Sali. When we come back, we're going to talk some city politics. Municipal Monday. We're going to do this every Monday from now on, Municipal Monday. We're going to talk about the race for mayor, the change election, incumbents versus upstart challengers in some of the wards race, the St. Bridget's standoff, Phase 3 of light rail, all of that ahead on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
News in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, August 29th. Good morning. I'm Danielle Bain. Right now in Ottawa, 24 degrees, mostly cloudy skies, 27 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news this hour. The federal government is looking at ways it can keep politicians safe after the deputy prime minister faced harassment and intimidating in an incident late last week. Several cabinet ministers speaking at an unrelated news conference say there is a growing disturbing trend of people launching intimidation campaigns or making threats to politicians and journalists in Canada, and it's unacceptable. When asked if every cabinet minister should have a protective detail like the prime minister, Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino says they are looking at all options. With the school year right around the corner, another wave of COVID-19 is not out of the question. The director of the Ontario COVID-19 Science Advisory Table, Dr. Fahad Razak, tells City News it's going to be a challenging fall. He says there may be 5 to 10 times higher levels of COVID-19 circulating in August of 2022 compared to August last year. Although it's not mandatory, he recommends people continue to wear masks in the classroom. And this morning's planned launch of the Artemis moon mission was aborted due to technical difficulties. NASA Administrator Bill Nelson says there will be liftoff when all systems are go. The next potential launch date is Friday. And in sports, after getting swept by the Angels this past weekend, the Blue Jays will attempt to get back in the win column against the Chicago Cubs tonight at 7 o'clock. You can catch that game right here on 101.1 FM or 1310 AM. City News Time, 11:34. I'm Danielle Bain. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
So every Monday we're going to do a deep dive on the municipal election coming up in October. Municipal Mondays, we'll call it. It's very catchy. And Walter Robinson is going to help us out with this today. Walter's had so many jobs and so many titles over the years that I'm just going to call you Municipal Political Analyst for the Rob Snow Show. Does that work for you?
That'll work for me.
That works for you?
I say to people, Rob, do you know who I used to be?
Do you know how I used to be? Yeah. Great. I'm good. Have you been having a good summer?
It's been a fabulous summer. Not a lot of rain, and we moved from the East End to kind of center town. So
you did?
Living that 15-minute city vibe, walking everywhere.
Like you left the burbs for the core?
I left the burbs for Old Ottawa East.
Old Ottawa East. Okay, very nice. Good for you. Good for you. Okay, all right. No more sprawl for you. No more getting stuck at the split. Nothing like that. Like that. Okay.
Although I can tell you the downtown area is a bit less of my political vibe. It's a little more progressive.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
But it's great to be down here.
You're going to miss the potholes of Jeanne d'Arc, Walter, and Saint Joseph. Okay. Look, we have a lot of things to get into here. We have 3 high-profile candidates running for mayor in Catherine McKenney, Bob Shirelli, and Mark Sutcliffe. At this point of the race, here we are a few days removed from Labor Day. At this point of the race, who is winning? Why are they winning? And does it even matter yet?
I'll take answer C. Does it even matter yet? I don't think anyone's winning. The 3 of the 15 candidates, the 3 have the highest name recognition. They're not talking at each other yet. They're not engaging with each other yet. They're still defining who they are. Mark Sutcliffe came out this past week with 28 co-chairs. I've never seen a campaign with 28 co-chairs. That would break the Jeff Bezos pizza rule for meetings, that's for sure. He's working on affordability and being not the politician. Catherine McKenney, I think, probably has the most name recognition if you think about it, because she's been very front and center in the media over they've been very front and center. My apologies, wrong pronoun. In the context of the convoy and the protests, lots of name recognition, lots of visibility, and a very solid communicator in terms of getting their messages across. And then Bob Shirelli is doing a lot of work on Twitter and his website, but not engaging. Until we see a debate, I really don't think it matters. But Now you've got to throw your weight late, like the old U.S. presidential campaigns in an election year. From Labor Day to the 24th, you have 8 weeks generously. That's a big spend and a lot of time and a lot of attention that you need to generate and momentum you need to generate.
So how do you spend this time? The best way right now?
I think the best way right now, if I were campaigns now, I would be gearing up and kind of laying out and making sure the media knows that I've got policy coming every week, every couple of days. I've got major events. I think the Sutcliffe campaign is having a launch on the 14th of September or something of that nature. I don't know about the other ones in terms of a relaunch if they want to do that. And then the other thing I think is a complicating factor here, Rob, is do we have another wave of COVID as we start going indoors? Does this kind of spike maybe late September, early October? Does this change your campaign dynamic? And what are you going to do digitally? Because everybody is in the Zoom world, the Teams world. They're getting the news from the Rob Snow Show, of course, but also some Twitter and other things. What are you doing to be a 7/24, 365 campaign where people will digest municipal news on their time frame, not yours?
Okay. So look, it's being described as a change election. It probably deserves that moniker. Going to be a lot of new faces at City Council. Going to be a new mayor. But, what can city government drastically change? A lot of the programs are mandated.
Yeah, so I think there's two things there.
Okay.
One, the city hall debate, the tenor must in and of itself change. I lived through the O'Brien years, as you know, and these council meetings would go 2 days, 3 days, like Toronto council meetings. Yeah. Then we had the Watson kind of club and the cabinet style of government. We need to find that happy balance where we can have a little more debate at City Hall, at committees, at council, where people can see their democracy in action. I think that will happen with a lot of new faces around the table. Then what I think it needs to change is just to put the stop sign on a bunch of things. And I think Bob Shirelli, to his credit, has been there to say, hold on Lansdowne, hold on LRT, we can come back to that. What are the major projects that we're doing? Because what has changed is the potential future of our city in terms of post-COVID, hybrid work. Do we really need this light rail system? Yeah. Does it need to go different? Does OC Transpo need to think about its suburban routes differently? Yeah. That literally go around your little 15-minute suburb.
Yeah. Yeah. Why don't we just fast forward? I have that on my list as a topic. 2020, I use this, or the 2022 estimate, because we don't know when this is going to begin or when it would end and what the value of a dollar is going to be. The 2022 estimate to extend LRT into Barrhaven, $3 billion, then $1.8 billion to get further into Canada, so $4.8 billion. How much sense does this make? If the original thinking was we have to get public servants from Barrhaven down into the downtown core and the same with Canada into the downtown core, is that really what we need? Or if I live on, say the south end of Canada and I really want to get to Bayshore, maybe work on that portion of the route via bus. I'm just wondering, $4.8 billion for phase 3, does that really make sense anymore?
In today's climate, I don't have a full answer for you, but my gut is no. No. And the question is, what are the population growth estimates now in the context of potentially hybrid work forever? How does that work in terms of going west, going south? Same thing I saw this past weekend. I drove on both sides of Bank Street on the Queensway along the 417. I saw people working on a Sunday. I couldn't believe it in terms of light rail. See, my point was, A, they must be really behind. B, they're up against the clock of some stuff you're trying to do in the summer and fall months that you cannot do in the winter. But C, I kept thinking, when will these trains ever be full? And are you almost putting this money in for a light rail system that you need in 2050, not 2030 now? And then the other question is, to marry that, the cost estimate with what are the ridership estimates? I believe you had the show about 3 or 4 weeks ago now that talks about the MTA in New York City not getting back to pre-COVID levels to 2035.
2035, that's right, yeah.
You built this thing to move people. If people don't need to be moved, why are we building?
Yeah.
It's a very, it's not a rhetorical question. It's the basis. It's the ballot question for light rail, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get back to the city election here. And my friend Derek Fage at Rogers Television is moderating all of those ward debates. And he's recording most of them this week, like 3 to 5 debates a day, Walter. Don't you envy my good friend Derek Fage?
And he's pulling down a national anchor's salary doing that.
Doing 3 to 5 debates. And I mean, like it's a municipal debate. There could be 7 or 8 people running in each ward, in some of the wards. But nevertheless, and they'll start airing next week on Rogers Television for people who are curious and really want to find out what's going on in their wards. I want to ask you, what advantages do the councillors who are running again, what advantages do they have over someone challenging, say, an incumbent city council?
In a normal election and not a so-called change election, we're 2 decades into this amalgamated city of ours, gone from 750,000 to 1 million people, bigger city problems, bigger city issues, bigger city aspirations. In a normal election, name recognition is huge because only 30 to 40% of people on average vote in a local election. And also access to data and names, and especially in this day and age, to customize your pitch to Rob Snow, who I helped with a humps and bumps issue, or helping work with OC Transpo to get a bus shelter there, or outside your mother's residence to get a bus shelter. Those things are really, really helpful because you can customize, even at the federal and provincial level now, you can customize your literature drops to people's specific issues as you've tracked them over the years, especially 4 years, in your own kind of constituency database or ward database. But in a change election, name recognition can hurt you because, as I remember in the last election in 2010, where I worked with a few candidates and made the pitch and said to them, when you're taking out a 10 or 15 or 25-year incumbent, what are you going to accomplish in the next 4 years that you haven't been able to accomplish in the last quarter century? That is a very powerful tool to drive out an incumbent, just to say, tired, no new ideas, and it's time for you to find a new career. The voters don't want to release you to succeed elsewhere.
Yeah, light rail will loom large, I think, there too. And you voted. If I said, if for challengers out there who want to go after an incumbent, ask the incumbent how they voted on light rail.
Yeah, and in that as well, right? You mentioned, and coming back to just talking about Derek doing all these all candidates debates. Yeah, we have a light rail inquiry report coming out. Right. Which could be very revealing in the context of the decision-making of the city. I think there'll be two things that will come into that report. A, the decision-making calculus and process of the city, which is problematic. But B, the actual contract that they purchased, in terms of services that they purchased from the consortium, was not delivered. It's bad news all around for everyone, and it's pretty tough to do a debate where this could become a dominant issue local at the mayor's level and at the council ward level, and you really hadn't had a chance to the background of all this information. And if you don't see somebody at your door and you are engaged, you might be going back to the Rogers site and saying, I'm going to go get that replay of the Capital Ward debate or the Fallingbrook debate, whatever the case may be, or West Carleton. So without that benefit of that report, you're going to have a lot of candidates debating in the dark on local issues or general issues around budget stability and what needs to change in terms of the tenor and actually robustness of the debate at City Hall.
Okay. Finally, let's wrap up this week, Walter, on the St. Bridget's standoff. Mayor Watson ruled out the city buying the property to prevent it from being sold to Tupac, which may be moot now since the owner is trying to evict them anyway, and there'll be some court time set aside to deal with that. There were calls from community associations, whatever. The city should buy the property to prevent Tupac from owning it. I thought that was insane. I want to know what you think.
Ditto.
All right.
You can't be. And every time I hear Tupac, I keep thinking of East Coast, West Coast.
I know.
Tupac. Yeah. California Love keeps reverberating in my head. Great 90s song. But this is one of those things where the issue may have resolved itself. The great Mackenzie King and Jean Chrétien philosophy of governing. Why decide today or tomorrow what could resolve itself a week from now?
Okay. Thank you, Walter Robinson. Great discussion this morning. It's going to be a fascinating municipal election campaign to watch. And we'll see if we can get people interested in it. We'll speak soon, my friend. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rob.
Municipal political analyst on the Rob Snow Show. That's Walter Robinson. Money Monday with our good friend Peter Fraser from Cardinal Planning. Coming right up on the Rob Snow Show here on City News.
It's so important, and I know I do come on and I talk about this a lot, but every 60 seconds somebody in Canada needs blood, and so it's important to keep reinstilling the message of donating and continuing to get new blood donors to come into our system to support. We have 1 in 2 Canadians who are in need of blood at any given time, but only 1 in 81 people actually donate. So we need to improve those statistics.
Yeah, and helping to improve those statistics, you guys are always coming up with new campaigns, and you've got a new campaign now. Tell me about the campaign.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm happy to. It's kind of about Canadians. We sacrifice everything for people we know and for people we don't. Canadians show up for other Canadians, and we do this out of the goodness of our heart. And right now, especially right now, through the pandemic and, the winter months and the snowstorms, we've had a lot of canceled appointments. We've had, a decline in the number of people who are able to show up for their appointments. And right now, what we really need is for everybody who's eligible to hear the call to show up for patients. So patients in Canada need blood. We want you to show up. We want you to say we're here for you. And with currently only 4% of Canadians who donate blood, we want more people to show up and improve those numbers and really make sure that the hospital patients are comfortable and that they know that blood will always be there for them when and where they need it.
Yeah, and Jan, you mentioned the pandemic, right? And that probably, as you said, had it's one of the biggest reasons why people perhaps have stopped. But you do have health and safety protocols, and we want to encourage people and let them know that those health and safety protocols remain in place. Let's talk a little bit about those.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, our workforce, our volunteers, everybody who works within the blood donor clinic is fully vaccinated. And we have many wellness procedures throughout, step by step. If you donated through the pandemic, you'll notice the distancing, you'll notice the wellness stations, the health checks at the front end, some more eligibility criteria, as you can imagine. But all of it is just to make sure that the experience itself is safe and reliable. And now we need people to come in and go through that process with us so that the end outcome, again, is that lovely unit of blood going to a hospital somewhere to help a patient.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
It is Money Monday with Peter Fraser, who is back with us here on City News on the Rob Snow Show for the first time. We are back together in what seems like forever, and I hope your summer has been going well.
It has, Rob. Nice to be back with you again.
Yeah, it's like a reunion day around here.
It is, yeah.
Vacations don't align, and, this is the way it goes sometimes. So Peter Fraser is a certified financial planner with Cardinal Planning and associate portfolio manager with Manulife Securities here in Ottawa, Manulife Securities Incorporated here in Ottawa. We talk about all things money and financial planning. And it was a rough-looking stock market on Friday, but even though things are down today, it's not nearly as bad as it was today. But the day-to-day gyrations of the stock market don't matter if you have a plan. And Peter today is going to talk about coming up with a retirement plan amid persistent inflation. And what sent the stock markets down on Friday was that the chairman of the U.S. Federal Reserve said the FOMC in the United States, we're really committed to fighting inflation, that it's going to be painful to fight inflation, and that interest rates are going to be higher for longer. So that means, Peter, has to be part of the plan, right?
No trouble reading those tea leaves, Rob.
Yeah. So tell us about tweaking the plan because of persistent inflation, because let's face it, this hasn't really been a problem for 40 years.
Well, for decades, we've really had low and stable, and of course now it's rising and challenging, and so investors and clients are going back to the drawing board to revisit and to recalibrate what do these success outcomes of these plans look like under these circumstances. And, you know, that's really important when it comes to retirement in an environment like this, because our chief concern is that inflation erodes the value of our savings and our investments at exactly the same time. It's really quite corrosive. And these, of course, are the 1 and 2 contributors to a retirement plan. So with inflation historically at 2%, a 4-fold increase like we're experiencing is a real shock to the system. So I want to say before we start with some of the strategies that I think can be helpful, but protecting a retirement nest egg is always a normal part of a good proactive planning process. But and we've talked, you and I, about stress testing for rate of return variance, other risks like longevity risks, outliving your money. But this is a big one, and inflation, I would say, has become job one, stress testing for that in these days.
Okay. So what are some tactics to consider?
Well, I was going to say right off the top that anything that offers an indexed retirement income flow is the gold standard, but outside of a public sector pension plan, that doesn't exist anymore. So we're really going to talk to situations that can help for the vast majority of people who are not drawing down pensions that are indexed every year with inflation. First one I want to talk about is deferral. It's often the case that CPP and OAS, if your plan doesn't already incorporate this, can take a strong look at deferring those benefits. Listeners may know that the CPP benefit goes up by 0.7% for each month that you leave it alone past age 65. So, you know, if you look at age 70, that's a 42% larger pension. You do the math on that, that means it's grown by 8% a year. OAS works almost the same way. So these are just bigger benefits with complete inflation protection. And if that's a possibility, that needs to be looked at as one alternative in these environments.
Okay.
Okay. The other D is that we could delay or at least test the plan for a delay in the hoped for retirement date.
Okay.
You know, if that's not critical, then obviously putting more runway on our work can allow for more room to make up for some of these market losses, which we're going to talk about in a minute, but also to weather, put us in a better spot just with a bit more time. So the delay is that one. Okay. And along that portfolio line, of course, is if we don't have enough to deal with, the markets have pounded away at people's valuations on both the stock and bond side. But I think there is an opportunity to check a portfolio, look at its diversification, strengthen what we can that may be able to provide income and growth. And I want to talk specifically about a couple of things. Tactical shifts in this environment. The highly risk-adverse investor can now add more guarantees to the portfolio because rates are up. So, you know, there are some higher interest rates being paid on deposits with a modest degree of inflation. I won't say full protection, but, you know, that looks a little better than it used to. Not fantastic. But also in the stock area, you might want to look at value names that have become undervalued. You want to look at things that just high quality that is on sale, I would say, higher dividends, low PE ratios. I also like dividend growing stocks. So that's just simply where, you know, your year-over-year rate of dividend growth sometimes can outpace inflation if a company is able to continue to raise dividends faster than what we're experiencing.
Okay.
Commodities, alternative investments are worth a look. Infrastructure, things like timber, farmland. oftentimes these things have some capital gains potential with an income flow that at least keeps our nose above water when it comes to inflation.
Okay.
And the last one is just a little bit of housekeeping that I think applies to us all, but certainly makes sense in high inflation times. Let's put the current and projected retirement expenses up on the screen and take a look at what we can, maybe trim or eliminate. You want to take a second look at those sensitive areas that are really higher inflation subjected, food, fuel, travel. Those things seem to be experiencing higher rates of price increases than others. And as a reminder, if there is still debt in a retirement plan, and that's not unusual as it may sound, not as unusual as it.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.